makes you feel all warm and fuzzy, doesn't it? Doesn't it?
What?
You. Yeah.
Me? Do I make you feel warm and fuzzy?
No, they're listening to the messages. Could you not hear them?
No.
Oh, you didn't hear them?
Don't have my earpiece in yet.
These were all just lovely messages from people saying Merry Christmas.
Oh.
That'll be a gaffe for the start of the next year.
Did you commission that?
No, I didn't have to.
Did you not?
No.
Oh, did you? Oh, right.
No, I didn't have to.
So
People
if
love
I
what we
drop
do.
the hint that my birthday's on Boxing Day, which it is, you can check on Wikipedia.
Okay.
My birthday's Boxing Day.
It?
Do you reckon people might?
They might wish you happy birthday for Boxing Day.
Are you away next week?
Yeah, I'm away next week. I'm off all week, and we've got to go because we're out of time. But listen, have a wonderful Christmas. Great to see you last night. Good to see you. That's not meant to be...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Alex Phillips. I'm here with you until 1 o'clock. My producer, Ted, is already making me laugh. How unprofessional I started off the show. Sniggering. So much to talk about today. You're with Talk on DAB Plus Radio, on YouTube, on your smart speaker, on your connected device, on our snazzy little Talk app that you have by now downloaded to your phone. I know you have. Coming up on the show, the Bank of England has warned that the economy is stagnating after Rachel Reeves' disastrous budget as businesses have responded by raising prices and cutting jobs. It was all too predictable, wasn't it? Sir Keir Starmer has said he has no regrets about the decisions he has made in the past 6 months and would have done nothing differently. Great. And a British Sharia council was given credibility by the High Court when a judge used one of its fatwas to decide a case. And most agencies warn of pre-Christmas panic and record traffic as millions set to make holiday journeys starting from today. I tell you what, London is like an apocalyptic ghost town. There's no one there. I got to sit down on the tube. It was amazing. This is Talk. Welcome to the home of common sense. Right, shall we get stuck into politics? Let's start off with a story that came out just this morning, which is Mandy. That's right, Peter Mandelson, the man with more lives than Rasputin, it seems, has been picked by Sir Keir Starmer as the UK's ambassador to the US. Now, is this a good idea? The man apparently is brilliant at trade. Oh, he worked on the trade envoy in the EU. Used to be business secretary, trade secretary. I mean, he's had pretty much every job. He's almost given Michael Gove a run for his money. But he's a bit of a Remainer, isn't it? Or a Ramona. He's a big fan of Europe. And Donald Trump is not. How's that going to play out? Let's speak now to Tim Montgomery, founder of Conservative Home and former Number 10 advisor. Hey, Tim, how are you doing this morning?
Very well, and happy Christmas to you.
Happy Christmas
Alex.
to you. Are we starting that from today? Is this like the run-up now? We get to say it every day? I'm not sure.
I'm just struggling to hear you a little bit. I'm just trying to see if I turn up the volume. Yeah.
Oh, you do that. Don't you worry. We'll wait for you, Tim. You're worth it. We there?
I've got you now.
Oh, good. That's nice to know. Right, Peter Mandelson, US ambassador. It's the first time, I think, since the 1970s that it's been a political appointment to the job. Normally, of course, it goes out to the diplomatic community, the people who we don't often tend to know the names of, but they sort of raised in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and up the ranks and then become ambassadors one day. But no, Peter Mandelson, the man with more lives than a cat, he's going to be our ambassador in America. What do you make of it?
I think I disagree a little bit with you, actually, Alex, because I think if you or I were appointing, Britain's ambassador to America, it probably wouldn't be Peter Mandelson because, we live in a Brexit set of, relationships. But if Labour are going to appoint anyone, I think Peter Mandelson is about the best they could have appointed, actually. Yes, you're right, he did back Remain, but listening to him on a Times podcast recently, he was worrying about the level of regulation, for example, coming from the EU on AI. And he says, actually, it is a Brexit advantage. Peter Mandelson saying that Britain cannot regulate a new industry in the sort of suffocating way that the EU will. And he's been made positive noises about Trump. He sort of respected his mandate and said, we all need to understand why Americans voted for him again in such large numbers. So I think he'll have a political sensitivity to the British-US relationship, better than most other Labour people. He was always a Labour moderniser, and also, I think, probably more of a political touch than an ambassador from, as you say, from the career diplomatic service, because Trump will know that Mandelson has, Starmer's ear in a way that perhaps wouldn't otherwise be true. So I think it's good for the country, actually, that we have him of all the people Labour could choose.
I was not expecting that from you, if I'm going to be honest, Tim, but it's nice that we have a bit of positivity. We can't always go around bashing everything that Labour does, as much as I like to. But when it comes to the budget, well, I think we can justifiably bash that.
Back to form there.
Exactly. Especially given that the Bank of England says it's a load of dreck, that we're basically going to be facing stagnation at this point.
Yeah.
Because, who'd have thought putting up taxes on people employing people is going to be a bad thing? I mean, it was very predictable, wasn't it? Rachel Reeves is way out of her depth, isn't she?
Yeah, well, she is. And the economists have this expression called a doom loop. And basically, I think that's the danger that Britain could fall into this loop now. And what it basically means is that a government puts up taxes because it wants to spend it on public services or reduce the deficit. But those taxes depress growth, as you've just been saying, and we're now experiencing. And that depression then means they don't hit their targets for revenue. And what they do, rather than learning the lesson that they've made a mistake, they come back for more taxes. And then the economy softens again. And that is Rachel Reeves' big danger now. She has so burdened and already over, the tax burden was at a highest record level at the end of the Tory years. It wasn't low then. She's added to it now. And I think we're in a very dangerous position.
And quite scarily, the other day when Sir Keir Starmer himself was asked, does this mean you're not going to put up taxes again? He said, well, I can't rule it out, which pretty much means, yes, we intend to, which is frankly a disaster. The economy is on red alert. It's killing growth, according to the Bank of England. And yet, I remember in the run-up to the snap election, it was a big fight over, no, we're for growth. No, we're for growth. We're going to be all about growth. The last thing you need to do for growth is put up taxes on people who actually do the employing, the private sector, pump a load of money into the public sector. And then the other thing, of course, that Sir Keir Starmer's doing is sniffing around Europe again, wanting a better deal. And information's already leaked out from the EU side that they're going, right, OK, you better rejoin the single market. You better rejoin the customs union. Do you think that's part of the reason why they've picked Mandelson? Because he actually knows his way around EU and EU trade deals. And frankly speaking, if they want to get closer to Brussels again, we're going to end up a bit like the rope in a tug of war between America and the EU, because Donald Trump is not pro-EU at all and would rather, I think, see the UK have a closer transatlantic relationship rather than migrate back under the regulatory orbit of the EU.
Well, I think I'm going to continue to my surprising theme of the morning, Alex, and defend Peter Mandelson's point again. I think it is useful, as you say, to have someone in that role in Washington who does understand how the EU works. But I see it more as a technical advantage than, Peter Mandelson isn't being appointed as some sort of roving ambassador to the EU. It is an American appointment. He'll have his work cut out focusing on that. So I am worried that Starmer won't keep his promises not to sort of really revisit the Brexit settlement. But I don't think this appointment in itself tells us very much about that.
As a sort of new reformer, as people might not know, Tim Montgomery, of course, founder of Conservative Home, is now in the Reform Party. What do you make of it? There's a story kicking about yesterday, but I want to take the opportunity to ask you about it. This IPPR report, which, of course, is a sort of Blairite think tank, which turned around and went, oh, well, we better look into foreign donations to political parties. And also the idea that Starmer hasn't ruled out not having next year's local elections in May because, I don't know, they might gerrymander, they might change boundaries a bit. Do you think this is in reaction to the growth of reform, or is this just pure coincidence?
Pure coincidence. Starmer only thinks about the national interest, Alex. He wouldn't ever think of the Labour Party's interest. No, of course it's not coincidence. The fact is, it is controversial if someone who is a foreigner, although with a legitimate British company, gives, say, $20 million to a British political party. That will be controversial. I accept that. But I think the wider picture is that the main two parties in this country have big advantages because of first past the post system, the attention that the BBC gives them, the backing they traditionally have from big business and the unions. And so I think most British people know we're not dealing with a fair sort of setup. It's hard for new parties, whether it's the Greens or Reform, to break through. And in a way, I think if the money from Elon Musk comes, it's a way of almost levelling the game and making it fairer, because the opinion polls show Reform already has a lot of support. Elon Musk isn't creating a new phenomenon. He's backing it in a way. And I also think that politicians, the public, are wise enough to see when someone like Starmer is trying to change the game for his advantage. And I think Labour got a big donation from a foreign-based environmental campaigner at the last election. They didn't seem very worried when that was happening. It's only when Reform or someone else is getting an advantage that they seem to want to change the law. And if they do try and change the law, I think that will help Reform as well, because part of Reform's message is the establishment are against us, and that sort of action will only reinforce that.
It's pretty shocking. I actually find those two stories combined quite alarming. Yeah. It's the sort of activity you see by an African dictator who wants to cling on to power. Oh, we're going to mess about and cancel these elections. Oh, we're going to prevent other parties having any sort of funding. I actually think it's quite alarming.
Well, postponing or cancelling elections it really is a sign of dictatorship. It was done during the pandemic. It's the only recent example in modern British history for understandable reasons. People weren't allowed to mix then. But to do it in peacetime for no real good reason, I think all the main... And I hope there'll be Labour backbenchers. Lots of Labour backbenchers, they will have... I've spoken to a couple of them. They don't like it either. And... I was on Newsnight a couple of nights ago, Alex, with the veteran Labour MP Diane Abbott, and it was quite extraordinary. She absolutely feels Keir Starmer's wronged her, and she's a woman on a mission. And I think we are beginning to see quite a big Labour unhappiness emerge about Keir Starmer. And these moves, which you think will, may play well electorally for him, they don't fit with Labour's principles either. And he could be in trouble over stuff like this.
Right, you really think so? There could be a sort of revolt, a rebellion from his own benches?
Well, not on that issue a little bit. It's the cumulative sense that Keir Starmer isn't really a Labour man. Diane Abbott was saying to me privately in the lift, and then she did repeat it slightly less colourfully on air, that people forget that Keir Starmer is quite a young member of the Labour Party. He's only been in the party for a few years. And her view was that he doesn't really understand Labour's traditions, how it works. And also he's been very ruthless in chucking internal critics out of the party. We saw that at the election with deselections. And so she was saying he doesn't really have much goodwill from party. So when the going gets tough, there aren't really many Starmerites. They've backed him up until now, and not really rocked the boat because he's been winning. But if he stops winning and he doesn't have that sort of rootedness that she describes in the Labour Party, yeah, I think there could be trouble.
Now, I assume, like me, you deeply enjoyed watching Sir Keir Starmer being grilled by the liaison committee. I've never seen anything more boring in my life. When I can't go to sleep tonight, I know I'm going to put...
I'm afraid I didn't watch it, Alex, but well done you. You're a more professional journalist, clearly.
Right, I heard a bit of it, and it was just, honestly, it was boredom-inducing. It was dreadful. But during this so-called grilling, he said he has no regrets about the decisions he's made in the past 6 months and would do nothing differently. Is that sort of, the right thing to say when you're Prime Minister? Or do you think actually a little bit of perspective, considering how, pretty abysmal his popularity ratings are, would do him some favours?
I think he's sort of trying to there is this mystique in Britain about Margaret Thatcher. It's the strong leader, the Iron Lady, who never U-turned. And I think people want to be compared to that. Starmer does. The reality, of course, is that Mrs. Thatcher was more flexible on lots of things than history remembers. And the public, while they like consistency, also do actually think, well, if a policy's wrong, much better to abandon it than stick at it. And he seems to really want to stick at his guns on all things, regardless of the reality. And I think the early decision that this government took to take the winter fuel allowance away from pensioners, we're still early in this Labour government, but I think it will be defining. Right. Because it sort of reinforces all things that people have begun to associate with this Labour government, that they don't do what they say they do in the manifesto. They don't really like pensioners. They don't understand pensioners. And it's all about environmentalism. Even if it means that, pensioners are going to struggle to pay their heating bills this year, Ed Miliband seems to think that the environment's more important. I think they should have abandoned that policy. And I'm very surprised that they haven't. And I think it's bad politics. Yeah,
it seems to me it's just entirely always all about net zero. It's all about Ed Miliband's, pet project of making Britain get to net zero ahead of everybody else and ruin our economy and everything in the process. There's also not going to be any U-turn on the farmers' inheritance tax changes. Now, this is the same government who basically said, right, we've got to give the public sector huge pay rises, especially train drivers, because we can't have all of these strikes anymore. Guess what? A lot of train drivers are still going to go on strike, so that didn't work. But the farmers aren't going to give up their fight either. And if I had a choice between having food on supermarket shelves and a train running, I know which one I would pick.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing that might be next. Up until now, the farmers have protested very noisily in Westminster, but peacefully. They've shown Starmer how basically the whole farming community is united against this policy, which wasn't flagged, like the winter fuel allowance policy. And I think they hoped that he might have U-turned by now, but he hasn't. And the thing that they now have to decide is, because they're absolutely clear that this is going to break their relationship with the countryside, the beautiful countryside we have, and the quality of food in this country. So they're not going to back down. So what do? They've tried sort of to be reasonable, and they've now got to decide whether to start withdrawing their labour, which could lead to certain food shortages in our shops and supermarkets. And they obviously don't want to hurt the public, because the public's largely on their side. But if Labour don't listen, one of the features of the year that's about to start, Alex, I think might be this real food shortages problem. And that really could be very serious for the government.
Thank you ever so much, Tim Montgomery. How are you feeling this morning, by the way? Tim was at the same party as Mike and I. We didn't actually say hello to each other there. Did you have a good time?
Had a great time. I've actually been quite well behaved this Christmas season and done quite a lot of media interviews about that defection you were talking about. So last night was my first real party night, and actually went to 3 parties. So
Did you?
I was feeling a bit rough this morning when I knew I had to do this interview.
Yeah, I know. You and I both, but look at us, true professionals. Monty, thank you ever so much. Now, listen, if you want to help out a girl in need, you can give me a call. Get on the blower. Keep me company. 03444 991 1000 is the number to whack into your phones right now and dial it up. You might get patched through to the studio and we can speak in person. That would be nice. You can use that number to send me a WhatsApp message or indeed leave me a little voice note on WhatsApp. I do love a good voice here. 8722 is the number if you'd like to send me a good old-fashioned text message. Put the word talk before your text. We're on X at talkTV. Taking a little break now. I'm back just after this.
Is he best placed to be US ambassador to the US?
You know what I'm going to say, actually? I think Lord Mandelson is better placed than many others that they could have elected.
Nigel Farage?
Elected. Well, Farage is a difficult one, seeing as he is the leader of an opposition party, one that is probably going to do quite well in the next couple of years. Mandelson, I know we all dislike him for various different reasons, but he's not an idiot. I'll say that much, and he's quite a pragmatist compared to certainly the latest iteration of the Labour Party.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the programme. This is Alex Phillips with you up until 1 o'clock. Let's hit up the phone lines now and speak to Tarquin. He's in London. Hi, Tarquin.
Alex, how are you?
I'm very well. Don't get many Tarquins these days.
No, that's what my mother and father said when they christened me. Yes. Anyway, I saw you on Dan Wootton the other day. You F-bombed like a good one. I loved it. It was brilliant.
Yeah, I know. Well, no Ofcom there, is there? I can be a potty-mouthed sailor when I'm let loose from this building. But while I'm on air now, and it's only 10:24 in the morning, the swearing doesn't begin until at least lunchtime.
Yeah. Now, being serious, my analysis on this Mandelson appointment, is this. I think. Initially, obviously, he's a screaming Ramona, and it's just completely ridiculous. But I think it's this. The Starmer regime is so desperate, the fact that they know Lammy is a liability after he called Donald neo-Nazi sympathiser, etc. So but he doesn't want to sack him. He hasn't got the cojones to sack Lammy.
Yeah, that's an interesting
So he's
point.
inserted an old stalwart. But the trouble is, I think that all Donald has to do is ring your mate Nigel and say, Nigel, give us the SP on this guy. And they'll just say, Ramona. And he'll just completely sideline him and blank him anyway. So it's a complete joke because they're so inept. The whole globalist Labour alike, it just pathetic. They're scraping the barrel, Alex. They'll soon fish. They'll work out what he's up to. He's trying to damage limitation on the Lammy debacle. That's what it is. He's going to get nowhere because there's a political appointment. He's not a professional diplomat in any... And he's got a massive agenda, this guy. And all he has to do is say three things. Jeffrey Robinson, the Hinduja brothers, and that Oleg Deripaska bloke, whatever, and just go, oh, my God, his credibility's completely shattered.
He does seem to have a lot of lives, doesn't he, Lord Mandelson? Yes. Tarquin, I think your analysis has been stupendous. Thank you ever so much. I do like the idea, actually, that he's sort of going in there to almost sort of diminish the what would you say? Diminish the influence, diminish the fallout, the damage of David Lammy. Right, let's speak now to Neil, who's in Buckinghamshire. Hi, Neil.
Hi, how you doing? All right?
Yeah, all right. Bit tired, if I'm going to be honest with you. But, you know, we're going to get through it together, aren't we?
Exactly. The Lord Mandelson thing, I mean, the bigger point is what's Starmer playing at? Because the people he's appointing, like the Transport Secretary, the criminal record, Rachel Thieves lied on her CV, etc., and all these other people in the front line, it should be him under scrutiny for putting these people in place in the first place. Mandelson's links to Epstein, there's pictures and everything. He used to go to his island frequently.
Well, wow, that's getting many a curveball today. I did not know this. Obviously, we're going to fact-check that. But I mean, it's a controversial appointment. It's definitely bound to get tongues wagging, wasn't it? But, you know, to me, it seems to suggest that Sir Keir Starmer doesn't really have many leadership qualities. I don't think he really likes being Prime Minister. I don't think he really knows what he's doing. I think most of the Cabinet are out of their depth. And so this is one way in which he can actually get a bit of political experience. Do you think that Mandelson's probably going to run the show a little bit and sort of, you know, boss about Starmer?
Who is Mandelson's boss? Tony Blair. He's the one that's going to be pulling the strings, not Mandelson or Keir Starmer. Everything is done through Tony Blair. If you look at it, and he's the big Europhile, that's the issue. Starmer is Blair's puppet.
I mean, do you think it could backfire and actually, as a result, Trump might sort of hardball England and go, right, I'm going to whack a load of tariffs? Well, to be honest, we don't really have any trade deal with them anyway, despite them being our biggest trade partner. But do you think it's going to make matters worse?
No, I think what it'll do, it'll play into Nigel Farage's hands because Donald Trump wants Farage in power. So what will happen is he will say, I'm not dealing with Mandelson, I'll deal with Farage. Farage will get a good deal, and Farage will then be thinking, all the people will be thinking, oh, look, Nigel's done this, Nigel's done that. I think it could actually be, yes, backfire on him big time, but Nigel Farage will win big time.
All right, good to have your thoughts there, Neil. That was Neil in Buckinghamshire. Thank you ever so much for your calls. If you want to join the conversation and be a bit like Tarquin, be a bit like Neil and keep a girl company as she sits in this studio all on her lonesome, the number is 0344 499 1000. Standard network rates apply, so you're not paying any more money than you would do if you were calling up your neighbour Bob. But you can just go knock on his door instead. But with me, I'm afraid you can't do that. You've got to pick up the blower to be patched through to the studio, and we're going to be speaking to more of you later. But you can phone at any time, you know. Register your interest. Let us know you want to talk, and we actually call you back. That's how good our service is here. Sending messages as well, 0344 499 1000 is the number on WhatsApp. You can leave me a voice note on there as well. 8722 is the number to text. Remember to put talk before your message. That way, somehow, that combination of 4 letters means that your message will ping the mast on top of Talk Towers, wend its way down the cladding, fire itself into my screen in front of me here in my little, Cape Canaveral setup, and then I can read it out on air, just as I'm going to do now. Andy from Bridgend says, good morning, Alex. I haven't got anything to rant about today. I just wanted to wish you a very happy Christmas. Well, that's nice. Thank you. Happy Christmas to you as well, Andy. Brian says, Alex, we learn as children piggy bank economics that proves you can't grow the piggy bank pot unless you put money in. Rachel from Accounts doesn't realise 95% of our money is held outside our piggy bank by 5% of the population. The rich. Well, some might say that that's kind of what she's trying to do. Take money off what she perceives to be the rich. And if the piggy bank was the treasury rather than the economy... but look, I agree with you, actually. She's rubbish. The Labour government's rubbish. Our economies are rubbish. Francis in Wilton says, Labour are not only taxing us to the hilt and beyond piling on costs, they're adding to net zero subsidies and costs direct to the consumer. So, disposable income is shrinking as council taxes, utility costs and other charges like motoring, insurance... Firearms, shooting in Wiltshire is important, Francis said. Spiral out of control. Who knew costs of firearms are spiralling out of control? They're also investing unwisely with too much overseas and net zero spending. So more than a double whammy. Right, going to take a short break now, but when we come back, we're going to be discussing the fact that a High Court in the United Kingdom has actually used a fatwa in their ruling. A fatwa. Yeah, you heard that right. We're discussing that after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Now, last time I checked, we live in the United Kingdom, and largely we are a Judeo-Christian country. In fact, oh my gosh, I've cut my lip. Sorry about this, guys. But apparently, quite incredulously, a British Sharia council was given credibility by the High Court when a judge used one of its fatwas to decide a case. The Islamic Council, founded by hardline preacher Haytham al-Haddad, issued a religious ruling forbidding a health trust from allowing a brain-damaged child to die. Secular campaigners said using fatwas in civil courts undermined liberal democracy. Well, I get a tissue because I'm bleeding like a rugby player right now. Let's speak to Mohammed Amin, who's ex-chairman of the Conservative Muslim Forum. Mohammed, great to have you on. What do you make of this case that a High Court has actually used a fatwa in one of its rulings?
Good morning, Alex. First of all, this is not exactly hot news. This case was 5 years ago in 2019. And this morning, I downloaded the full 70-page High Court judgment. I went through it very quickly, of course, because I was short of time. The word fatwa occurs 8 times in 70 pages of legal opinion or legal decision by the judge. And how much do you know about the facts of the case? I can explain them very briefly. The parents were Muslims. The 4-year-old girl who had a serious brain problem, she'd had a blood vessel, I think, burst in her brain. And the hospital trust that was treating her wanted to switch off life support while the parents wanted her flown to Italy, where a hospital was willing to carry on treating her. And the parents, being Muslims, got a legal opinion from the Fatwa Council in Europe that as Muslims they couldn't consent to having life support turned off. I mean, there are cases like this crop up quite regularly, whether people are religious or non-religious. And in this case, the parents wanted some kind of authoritative statement about their Islamic religious beliefs. As I said, the word itself was only used 8 times in 70 pages by the judge as he was going through it. And my quick reading is that it played basically no important role in the decision. I think this is a storm in a teacup by this journalist. It's a really poor quality article in the Times.
But should we be alarmed at all that a fatwa could be used in a court in the United Kingdom? Apparently we're sort of the leaders in Europe when it comes to having Sharia courts in this country. Is it right to have a parallel legal system, so to speak, that isn't founded in the laws of this land?
Well, let's first of all go back to what happened in this case. We have some Muslims saying that Islam says X, and it's perfectly reasonable for them to put forward some kind of authoritative statement from the Sharia Council about what Islam says. It's no different from a Roman Catholic getting something written down by a cardinal saying Roman Catholicism says this, or a Jewish person going to a Beth Din and getting the Beth Din to write down Judaism says this.
But in terms of having Sharia councils in this country, which we have quite a number of, is that appropriate? I mean, Fayaz Mughal, who's the founder of Tell Mama, an organisation which protects Muslims from hate crimes, he says Sharia councils are composed mainly of men over the age of 50 who have very little relevance and understanding of modern life. Their interpretations of Islamic law and their desire to keep couples together even when there are serious problems in the relationship do not recognise the safeguarding of women. That's sort of in the context of, say, Sharia divorces. But again, I'll repeat my question. Is it right to have Sharia law in this country, which in many respects isn't the law of our land, or it's not in many respects, it isn't the law of our land, full stop, might contradict the law of our land, so you end up with a justice system that does one thing for one section of the population and something else for the other section. That isn't the same law for everybody.
Well, again, let's look at the facts. We have one law in this country, which is English law made by Parliament and made by judges appointed by the Crown. Quite separately, we have a system of Christian church law administered by Christian courts for very specific Christian issues. We have a system of Jewish law where Jewish people can go to a Beth Din if they got a disagreement between themselves and they want some kind of arbitration. And likewise, we have this Sharia system where Muslims want to get a private ruling, because these are not state-sanctioned courts. These are private arrangements where people of religious belief, if they have an argument within their religion, want an opinion. What's wrong with that?
Well, what's wrong with it is when it's being used inside a court in the United Kingdom. And also, some people might say that some of the rulings are just not appropriate in 21st century Britain. This is Britain. This is the way we do law. This is our, democratic right. We get to vote in Parliament. Well, we get to, vote for people who in Parliament decide the laws of this land. And there probably shouldn't be anything else other than that.
Well, let's take those. You said 2 separate things. Let's take them one at a time. The one about the High Court using the opinion of the fatwa as part of its decision making, that's no different from it using an opinion from a Jewish religious court, or using an opinion from, say, a Roman Catholic cardinal about what Roman Catholicism says, if that was relevant to a High Court decision. What is wrong with that?
Look, what I might say is people being treated differently in the eyes of the law based upon their religion probably shouldn't be the case.
The court is not treating people different based upon their religious beliefs. If somebody's religious views are relevant to a decision, the court is entitled to seek whatever guidance it wants and to take into account whatever information is available about that religion.
OK, let's take the example, let's say, of polygamy as well when it comes to Sharia, something that's allowed under Islamic law. People can download an app where they can write a will according to Sharia law, where they get to sort of, you know, decide what their various wives all get. But in the United Kingdom, under our legal system here, if you're married to more than one person, that's considered an illegal offence. That's considered bigamy. Should there be two different types of law in this land?
There is one type of law in this land, which is English law. An English domiciled person cannot engage in more than one marriage without it being a criminal offence. And in cases, sometimes people from this country go to Pakistan, for example, and take a second wife, and actually they find themselves then quite correctly being charged with bigamy in the English courts. So the only situation where English law recognises more than one wife is if somebody is married already overseas in a country which has polygamy and the family moves to the UK, English law will recognise them as still being married, all three of them, for example. But apart from that case, English law says you can only have one wife. I don't see what you're talking about as a problem.
OK, well, let's go back to the case in hand here, where essentially the advice based upon Sharia law that the court was given, which then affected the judgment of not to enable the Barts Medical Trust to Health Trust to end the life support of the child in question. Were this to be a family in the United Kingdom who, say, didn't have religious beliefs but similarly wanted the same outcome, and then because they didn't have, you know, this is what a church says, this is what a temple says, this is what a synagogue says, this is what a mosque might say, and there was a different outcome to that case, would that be fair?
Well, first of all, these cases crop up quite regularly in the UK. They're very sad cases. They happen regularly. Sometimes the parents are religious. Sometimes the parents are not religious. I haven't gone through all the cases. I have gone through this one. I said I quickly went through all 70 pages. And my view from reading that 70 pages very quickly is that the fatwa played basically no meaningful role in the decision.
Mohammed, thank you ever so much for joining me. And that was Mohammed Amin. And we're going to take a short break now. When I come back, we're going to be getting an update on travel chaos. Apparently today is the day that everyone is getting on the train or hitting the road because it's only, Christmas on Wednesday, isn't it? So I think people are going to be starting off their journeys from today. If that's you, you may want to stay tuned because we're going to give you the updates after this.
when it comes to family life, you've got to ask, is it for the security of the nation and in the public interest? Well, surely having someone, as we've just seen, who controls 90% of the UK's heroin market is a threat to the country, a security. You would think. So a guy that simply attacked someone with whatever it was at B&Q, I don't think will even reach, the idea that the court will say, or will even consider it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. I think I've managed to deal with my split hip. That was a moment, wasn't it? It was like a rugby player coming off the pitch. It's like in winter, cracked hands, cracked lips. Just falling apart, basically, this morning. Let's read some of your messages. Morning, Alex. Wish you a Merry Christmas and hope you have a perfect birthday, says Margaret and Lisa in Birmingham. Do you know, I'm actually going to be presenting all next week, pretty much, apart from Christmas Day and Alex Day, which is the day after Christmas Day. That is Alex Mass. I like getting the messages early, though. It's nice. It's nice to hear. Phil says, farmers make little or no money on milk. Water in the shops is more expensive. Yet a flat white costs twice as much as 2 whole litres of milk. Farmers will dump milk for a week and lose little or nothing. We're all paying too little and it's being driven by supermarkets. Let's see how we do without a brew for a week in support. Look, I'm with you, Phil, all the way up to not having a cup of tea for a week. That is where I have to draw the line. And I do try and do my bit, I always try and get my milk directly from farmers. I spend a lot of time at farmers markets because I'm that kind of gal. I was brought up in lovely Gloucestershire, and so I'm a big believer in helping our farmers. And you're right, the supermarkets really do play price-fixing games at artificially lowering the cost of milk. And so basically for farmers, they don't make any money on it at all. Daniel says, Alex, you are our Cinderella. Happy Christmas. Keep up the good work. Does that mean I suit polishing floors or something? Is that what Cinderella did? I don't know. Pumpkin time, as my dad would say when it's time to go to bed. Brian says, Tim is right. We're all poorer because the rich 5% are sitting on 95% of all of our money. That's not very democratic. Sound like a load of socialists this morning, you guys. Right, let's have a listen to Karen. She wants to talk to us about Labour.
Hi, Alex. Merry Christmas to you. But my husband's just made a really good point, actually. There's the politics of envy, though. They hate the rich. They want to steal from the rich to give to the poor, which is not what they do anyway. They steal from the sort of medium rich people, i.e. the middle class, and give to the poor. But they're all rich themselves. Keir Starmer's worth 7 million quid. Rachel Reeves is probably worth a few million quid. And Ed Miliband's going to make even more millions from this net zero scam. So how have they got the politics of envy? Why do they hate rich people so much? Why don't they just take it out of their own bank accounts and give it to us? They might win some votes.
Well, yeah, they're probably going to struggle with that one. But that's OK. They're just going to cancel the May elections instead. That's their secret plan. Not so secret. Right, let's catch up now on travel, because today is the day that craziness of Christmas when it comes to motorways and trains is kicking off. Let's speak to Ben Clatsworthy, who's travel correspondent at The Times. Now, people are planning to make journeys to go see their loved ones this Christmas. What would your advice be? What's the situation looking like out there?
Yes, good morning, Alex. Today is the big start of the getaway for the Christmas period this year. Disruption expected on the roads today. Lots of traffic, particularly down towards the port of Dover. Also on the big main arterial routes, the M1, the M4, and of course the M25 around London as well. But also this Christmas, a lot of engineering works. Network Rail still say it's the right time of year to do it when fewer passenger numbers travel over the festive period. But big disruption, particularly out of St Pancras on the Midland Main Line, no services up to Luton Airport, which will be experiencing very busy periods, particularly this weekend in the run-up to the Christmas getaway, but also from Boxing Day onwards as people who are lucky enough to be going for some sunshine depart. That'll also impact services down to Gatwick as well from up in Hertfordshire, and Liverpool Liverpool Street Station in London as well. It's closed from Christmas Day until the beginning of January as well for big engineering works there. That'll affect services up to Stansted Airport.
Now, apparently, data from the RAC has estimated 29.3 million journeys will be made by motorists in the run-up to Christmas Day. Around half of these, 14.3 million, are going to be this weekend alone. Yeah, my understanding is they're actually trying to remove national highways 95% of roadworks on the roads that they manage. So that surely is some good news. That might alleviate things a little bit.
Yes, national highways do this around Easter time, at the festive period, basically getting where they can take away roadworks. It's one of the most frustrating things, I'm sure listeners will agree with, when you're driving and you are stuck in a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, and you can't see anyone doing any work whatsoever.
Oh my goodness! I moan about this all the time. The M5 is the bane of my life. Why is that? You go down the M5 and you've got basically a whole, miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of 50 miles per hour, and you can't see anybody doing anything.
Yes, and one of the fact that they acknowledge it now and put up signs that say, you might not be able to see us, but we are still working.
I saw one of those. Work out of sight, it said on one of these big flashing boards. I was like, what work?
And unfortunately, this Christmas, the same issue that we talked about back in the summer continues, which is that national highways are doing a lot of work where they had smart motorways, the failed scheme of the previous two governments, both Labour and the Conservative Party, set up smart motorways, removing the hard shoulder. They are now putting more emergency refuge areas into these motorways. Huge amounts of disruption up and down the country. It was a huge problem in the summer. It will be a problem again today and over the weekend because of those 50-mile-an-hour limits, some of them up to 20 or 30 miles in places where they are fitting new emergency lay-by areas to make these roads that were never designed to be the way they are safe. So that as well is a big problem, and is the type of place where they can't remove the roadworks at the moment, and you will see a sign saying you might not be able to see us, but we are working.
Oh, it drives me absolutely mad. You know, I drove the length and breadth of France over the summer. I went from all the way from Calais down to the very southeast near the border of Spain. And one thing I noticed is when they have roadworks in France, they sort of bring down the speed limit a teeny little amount like this, and they've literally got people sort of digging up the road, just a couple of bollards as the traffic flies by. And I thought, this is nice and refreshing. In Britain, you know, they cut the speed down ridiculously and nothing happens. It goes on forever. It's just so inefficient. Talking about inefficiency, what about train journeys? Because we gave our lovely train drivers quite a big pay rise, didn't we? But my understanding is that isn't going to absolve us of the stress of strikes.
Well, this is one of the big ironies of the new Labour government. They got the train drivers union, they got the ASLEF, who represent the train drivers, they got the RMT into room, they had tea and biscuits together, and Louise Haigh, the former Transport Secretary, fired for being a convicted fraudster that she'd lied about. She got them round and she said, no, don't worry, pay rises all round, no need for any modernisation, and it's backdated to 2022. So the train drivers, who are on about £69,000 a year, got a lovely little pre-Christmas big lump sum into their bank accounts, and strangely enough, now they're being asked, will you do some overtime? Will you work on your rest day, which is how the railways have operated for years? And they're saying, no, actually, I'm all right because I've got all that money and I'm going to take my children into London. We're going to go and see the Harry Potter play this year, and they're just not going to work. And unfortunately, there's huge disruption. Great Western Railway, Thames Link as well, also Northern trains are all hugely affected by it. And it's the government's own fault. They took away any need for reforms to try and get old contracts to say that people will work Sundays, particularly into their contracts. On Thameslink, it's a particular problem. They have Sundays in their contract, but their rest days are Thursdays and Saturdays. Big problem there for those drivers, that they just don't have enough because they're saying, well, I don't want to work. Thank you very much for the offer, But I'm not entitled to. If you're offered overtime, I'm offered overtime. It's a voluntary thing, and they're saying no, I don't want it, and it is squarely the government's fault. And I was speaking to someone yesterday who said that anecdotally they'd heard it, and although it's very difficult to, it's a human thing. It's that they're not doing anything wrong. But of course, the train companies are struggling, and it makes it for passengers really disruptive. I live on the Thameslink line, and basically every evening you go on the app and look for a train to come home, and it says, oh, sorry, this train's been cancelled due to a shortage of train crew. There is only one member of train crew on the train, and that is the driver.
Exactly, isn't it ridiculous? It's absolutely ridiculous. And yet, they've a load of them have got these big pay packets, the backdated pay increases. They've got a nice old Christmas bonus. And yet, Avanti West Coast staff are set to go on strike after Christmas. What's that about? Why are they still striking?
Yeah, so their train managers are in a separate dispute. They're represented by the RMT union. They are in a dispute over various terms and conditions. That was always one of those ones where the RMT was saying during the negotiations, yes, but there is still this ongoing dispute at Avanti. Avanti had issues with their drivers. They got around that by paying them the standard overtime fee plus £600 a shift on top of their usual
600 quid a shift? How long's the normal train driver's shift?
It's 8 to 10 hours, so it is a normal working day, but £600 on top of their overtime agreement that they've been paid. Now the train managers, they're in a dispute. They want £300 as overtime extra payment for working on their rest days.
Blimey, I should give up this job and go into the trains business. It's where the money's at.
And you've got a wonderful union that represent you.
I think it'd be quite a nice job, actually. I love going on trains, looking at the great British countryside, all the wonderful parts of the world you might see. Now, on top of all of this, we've now also got planned engineering works, which are going to take place in Liverpool Street, Paddington, St Pancras, and that's happening over Christmas and New Year. So the roads are going to be snarled up. A lot of people might go, OK, let's get on the trains, and guess what? They're going to be in a mess as well.
They are. As I said earlier, Network Rail still insists that it's the right time of year to do the works. This weekend, though, I'm perplexed by the decision on the Midland Main Line. They're fitting a new bridge on just south of St Albans. That's basically closing the line between St Pancras and up towards Luton and the airport, as I mentioned. That's huge work right through until after Christmas. This weekend, it's a really popular weekend for people to go into London. It's last-minute Christmas shopping. It's go out and see a show. And actually, that's all been completely messed up by the engineering works. And, of course, we all recognise that this work does need to happen. I wonder whether starting on the 21st of December is the right time, or whether it's just a little bit earlier, and actually whether if you put disruption into the new year further, that would be better, when actually there are a lot of people who can now work from home and so on. Whereas this weekend, historically, has always been a hugely busy travel weekend, and does seem to me a little bit short-sighted to kick off engineering work that little bit earlier every year.
It's probably because all the engineers refuse to do overtime as well. Ben, thank you ever so much. Ben Clatworthy there, travel correspondent at The Times. Now, let's have a little listen to a voice note. This is Ray.
Alex, when Mandy tells Trump that the Labour government is moving towards the EU and not America, Trump will probably put 20% tariffs on British goods, which is absolutely going to flatten British business. And we're going to go into a nosedive recession. Well done, Labour.
Well done, Labour, indeed. You're right. It does. You know, let's see if Nigel Farage can sort of smooth things over a little bit. I want to know where you're from, Ray. Was that a hint of a West Country accent there? Right, what do you think about all of this? Lord Mandelson, of course, has been picked to be the ambassador over in America in order to win over Trump. He is, of course, one of the world's most charming men. Who couldn't he win over? But who would you rather see as the UK ambassador? Should it be a political appointment? Perhaps we should just stick to good old-fashioned appointing diplomats who've sort of been raised under the wings of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Or do you think a political appointment is right and that'd do the trick? Tim Montgomery, of course, starting off this show, clearly no fan of the Labour Party, actually thinks it's a good idea. He says he does know his way around. We also had Tarquin pointing out that maybe this is being done to diminish the worst effects of Lammy, because at least Lord Mandelson will throw his weight around, his political heft around a little bit, and it might sort of, sort of put Lammy in the corner, so to speak. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can talk to me about that. You can talk to me about anything, really. You know, this is the home of conversation here. This is where the nation comes to talk. So pick up the blower, type in 0344 499 1000 and you might be patched through to the studio to keep me company on this Friday. 87222 is the number to text. Remember to write the word talk before your message. That way it wends its way into the studio. You can also send me a WhatsApp message, or you can leave me a cheeky little voice note. 0344 499 1000 is the number for that as well. We're also on X at talkTV. Hayley has said, happy birthday, Alex. It's not until Boxing Day, people. I know I've told you already. I've given you a sort of run-up, so maybe you might remember just before Boxing Day to send me a birthday message. But thanks anyway. Hayley says, thanks for keeping me sane. I always make sure to tune in for my dose of common sense when you are on. Keep up the good work. Well, I don't know if you're getting much common sense out of me today. That's because half of us in the old sort of right-wing media world were all at a party yesterday, so we're rather jaded. Right, despite all that, I'm going to keep on going for 2 more hours. Your moral support is much appreciated. Stay tuned to talk. I am back just after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. Alex Phillips here with you until 1 o'clock here on Talk, on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, on YouTube, on your connected device, on our snazzy little application, which you can download onto your phone if you haven't done so already. And the great thing about that app is you can go back through the whole catalogue of shows. You can listen to something from, I don't know, maybe about a year ago, maybe even longer, I don't know. And it'd be like getting in a time capsule. You could just sort of play some lottery game and go, oh, wait, what date shall I pick? I know, let's go to what was going on the 17th of February back last year. And pretend you're living in the past, because under this government, many of us wish we were. Right, on that note, let us talk to Brendan Chilton, former Labour councillor and former chairman of Labour Leave, because one of the big stories today is the Bank of England itself saying that the budget has caused the economy to stagnate. Who would have thunk it, Brendan?
Well, good morning, Alex. May I be joining the chorus of happy birthday wishes for Boxing Day? And that's not me trying to delay answering your question. The Bank of England have obviously said that the economy is experiencing a lot of uncertainty at the moment because obviously we've got to see the impact of the budget. The budget was only a few weeks ago. It's far too early to tell what the consequences of that are on the longer-term economic growth prospects of the country. We also face the prospect early in the new year potentially of tariffs being imposed on this country by an incoming Trump administration. And so there's a huge amount of uncertainty. We also know that Russia is making advances into Ukraine, which is obviously impacting again on the supply chain of goods. And so while the Bank of England is absolutely right to highlight that at the moment the British economy is going through an unstable period, there are many, many reasons as to why that is the case.
But one of the big reasons, of course, was surely that budget. I mean, we had about, 3 months of doom-mongering coming from Sir Keir Starmer in the run-up to the budget. Oh, it's going to be difficult, tough decisions. That's not exactly going to roll out the red carpet for sort of foreign direct investment into the country, is it? And then, of course, you say it's too early to decide what effect the budget is going to have. But the thing is, when you're hearing from, say, even not that it necessarily directly affects the economy, but hospices, GP surgeries, SMEs saying that, they've done the maths and they're going to have to either not employ new people or potentially even let people go, then I think, that is an immediate effect. They know, they've done their accountancy. This is going to be a problem for them. That's the backbone of Britain. This budget, far from the promise of we're going to go for growth, this budget continues to scare anybody who might want to help see an uptick in the economy.
Well, we did have an enormous amount of foreign direct investment into the UK. I think this year we've been the third behind America and China. Now, returning to the budget itself, of course, no chancellor wants to increase taxes on businesses. No chancellor wants to increase taxes. The ideal world would be a low-tax economy where public spending is managed and where public services are doing well. Unfortunately, we're not in that position around the country. All you've got to do is look at our infrastructure, our public services, the amount of money we're spending on defence and other key areas. We just cannot, at the moment, afford where we are. And so the Chancellor has had to take this decision to put taxes up on employers. Now, as someone that is representing businesses, I would prefer that not to be the case. But there are only one or two taxes you can actually put in place that will raise the amount of revenue you would need to plug the gap in your budget. Those are employers' contributions, they are national insurance, VAT and income tax. Now, in the election, the government promised that it would not put up taxes, income tax, VAT and national insurance. And so the only other tax that was available was the employer's national insurance contribution. Now, while it's not very palatable, the Chancellor did say that this was a one-off budget. If you remember at the end of her statement in the House of Commons, she did say that we would not see a budget like this again. This was very specific to deal with this year's problems. And so hopefully in next year's budget and in the other fiscal events that will be happening, we will see other measures and perhaps more detailed on existing government policy to drive growth.
Well, who says that this year's problems aren't going to be next year's problems as well? I mean, it seems to me that a heck of a lot of money, they've come into power. You can't blame the Labour Party, haven't been on the opposition benches for 3 terms, suddenly going, right, we're back in charge, we're going to do what we want to do, and being kind of excited and getting out of the box and going, right, let's do this thing, we're going to give pay rises to the public sector. And the Conservatives have said this could be inflationary, we can't do it right now. Wouldn't it be great if everyone could get pay rises? But actually the reality of the situation is we're just not in a financial position to be able to do that. Oh no, said the Labour Party, we're going to do it. And then they turn around and go, yeah, let's go like hell for leather for net zero. Let's get Ed Miliband in charge of, the energy grid and throw 9 billion quid at Great British Energy. Aren't these all sort of vanity projects that if the wind was going the right way, in the right economic conditions, great. you know, do what you like. You're voted into power, put in place the policies you intend to do. But knowing, as you're saying, that we're in a difficult situation following the invasion of Ukraine, following global inflation, which hit everybody, frankly, after COVID, now is not the time to be doing that stuff, especially not the net zero stuff, surely.
Well, I think just dealing with the first point on pay, of course, those were legacy decisions that the previous government kept pushing down the road, and they needed to be made. Many in the public sector haven't had a real increase in pay for many years. Of course, you've got to ask questions about whether that can be afforded. And I think one thing the government does need to do is to attach very significant reform to public services over the course of this Parliament in exchange for those pay rises. And I know particularly the Health Secretary has said that there's got to be a radical transformation of the NHS. We need to see what that looks like. Now, in terms of net zero, I do think at the moment, while of course we all want to achieve energy security and we all want to achieve an energy system that doesn't harm the planet, we've got to be realistic about where we are in the world. We've got huge problems at the moment, not least, as you said, Alex, from the war in Ukraine. There's huge instability in the Middle East, and what impact that could have on the price of oil could yet unfold in the new year. We've got the issue of potential tariffs coming from America in the new year as well. And so I think a moment to look at where we are, look at where these risks are, and what policies we should and shouldn't be pursuing at pace in respect of net zero must be considered in the new year, particularly, as I say, with the threat of those tariffs coming from America in the new year.
Yeah, now we're going to pick up on that just after this. But guys, got some breaking news for you here. I don't believe it. Guess what's happened? Well, Mohammed Amar's and Mohammed Ahmad, 20 and 25, they're the guys at Manchester Airport, remember? They have been charged. They've been charged. It's happened. They've finally been charged. They've been charged with actual bodily harm. That is following the disturbance at Manchester Airport involving police officers back in July. That's according to the Crown Prosecution Service. Well, they weren't particularly in a hurry to get that done. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. People have been going on for ages. Why hasn't this happened? Why have these two men not been charged yet? Well, now they have been. But I got to tell you, that means we can't talk about it anymore, because those be the rules. Once people have been charged, that means that journalists have to be very careful what they say, because we don't want to prejudice any forthcoming trial. Although, quite interesting, of course, that when those two with their, spivvy little lawyer decided to sit down and do a sort of in their little suits and do a nice little interview. It was broadcast live on the BBC and Sky. Of course, that's before the charges, but I wonder how much that's going to prejudice the court case. But there you go, folks. Breaking news here at Talk. Mohammed Ahmad have now been charged with actual bodily harm after a disturbance at Manchester Airport involving police officers in July. It's a Christmas miracle! Right, let's go back to Brendan. And on the subject of Christmas miracles, I think we're going to kind of need one, aren't we? And Starmer's turned around and said he's got no regrets about any of the decisions he's made. Do you think, given his popularity ratings are really sort of like right at the bottom here, that he might do well in having a little bit, being a little bit more circumspect? And, you know, if he were to have regrets or were to question some of the policies he's put in place, might he look especially at things like the inheritance tax on farmers?
So, of course, the incoming Labour government has made decisions that have impacted on specific groups in society, farmers, pensioners, etc. They were tough decisions. They're not popular decisions. But I personally think, Alex, that a Prime Minister is not there to be popular. They're there to do what's right for the country, and yes, to take difficult and unpopular decisions. Some of our most successful Prime Ministers have been extremely unpopular, going back to...
Brendan, I know that. Look, I don't need a popularity contest for our Prime Ministers. I don't care if the Prime Minister is one of the most unpleasant people on the planet, as long as they have the country in good shape. The problem is with farmers, they've protested once, didn't they? There was a sort of, they all came down to Westminster. I've never seen so many barber jackets in one place in my life. And they've lobbied the government saying, look, these are the statistics. it's really going to impact on us. According to the Labour government, it's only going to make about 500 million quid. In terms of budget, that's coins down the back of the sofa. Still, the government was intransigent, and so they brought in a cavalcade of tractors. Quite a sight. And still the government's intransigent. So, you know, without doubt, the farmers aren't just suddenly going to go, oh, well, never mind, we tried, we're not being listened to. The problem is, of course, if the farmers decided to say, go on strike or blockade roads, we're going to be in a real mess. This is going to affect food on supermarket shelves.
Well, of course, we hope that the farmers don't do that. But just saying, as I was, Alex, there, I don't think prime ministers are there to be liked. They can make unpopular decisions. And if by the time of the next general election, the economy is growing, people feel as though they're better off, and some of the reforms that the government are talking about on public services, on planning, on industrial strategy, if those things start to seep through and people can see the pound in their pocket getting them more, the government will be re-elected.
But did you really think that the supposed 500 million quid that they're going to make on this inheritance tax on farmers is suddenly going to build a gazillion hospitals and make people feel the pounds in their pocket? I mean, it's just, to me, it is disproportionate. If they're honest, and I'm not sure they are honest, because they said, oh, it's not going to affect very many farms. Oh, it's only 500 million quid. You know, I'd say, well, why bother doing it? You know, it's really not one of those, a sum of money that is going to really move the needle a great deal, which makes me then think, well, it is going to affect far more farmers, as the NFU is saying, as DEFRA have suggested. And in that case, if they're going to say, oh, well, let's, you know, pander to the unions when it comes to public sector pay, what about the farmers? They're blimmin' important. If the argument is it comes down to what is best for the country, people not being able to buy food is a big issue. I mean, I just don't understand why this one, when they've seen the reaction, when they've actually had those statistics from DEFRA, which is the Whitehall department, saying, look, we actually think about, you know, 3/4 of farms could be affected by this. Why would they not go, do you know what, we've reviewed the figures and actually we're going to scrap the policy? That would have been a good idea, surely.
Well, of course, when this was announced, it was received by farmers very unfavourably. But if you look at most opinion polls, Alex, there is not a great deal of sympathy for changing this. People want to see everyone making their contribution via inheritance tax and all other taxes. Now, of course, in the grand scheme of things, the amount of money that will be raised by this tax will not be huge. And of course, many people can avoid this by transferring their estate to their children before they pass on. Now, of course, as you say, the sums raised are not massive, but it is a contribution. And if the government gave in to every opposition...
Yeah, but the disproportionate fallout, if farmers then decide to go on strike or do blockades, like, you know, they're not going to back down, are they? They're pretty hell-bent on being listened to. It's going to be a hugely disproportionate disadvantage from applying this policy and just going, do you know what, we've listened. We're in listening mode, we've heard you, we've seen all your tractors, we've been lobbied. We're going to reverse this. Brendan, look, thank you ever so much. I always love catching up with you, Brendan. Sensible man, actually, but Brexiteer to the heart. He was the chairman of Labour Leave. We worked together quite a lot back in those days. Now, I gave you some joyful breaking news in the middle of that segment. A Christmas miracle has occurred. Mohammed Amars and Mohammed Ahmad, 20 and 25, have been charged with actual bodily harm after a disturbance at Manchester Airport involving police officers in July. That's according to the Crown Prosecution Service. After dragging their heels for essentially 6 months, half a year, those men at Manchester Airport have now been charged with actual bodily harm. I can hear you whooping for joy out there. Now, it gets better. Ready for a second whoop? No police officers will be charged over the Manchester Airport incident. Woohoo! Police doing the right thing, doing their jobs. Those guys charged. Finally, some common sense in the world. Much to be cheerful about with that breaking news. Right. I'm going to go and celebrate during an advert break now with a fresh cup of tea, but don't go anywhere because I am going to be back just after this.
get a voice note from Rowan.
Jingle bells, labour smells, starmers flew away. Rainer mentions tax on second homes that you won't even pay. Hey, jingle bells, labour smells, lamb is just insane. I can't wait for Trump, Elon and Farage to save the UK. Whee!
Hey, very good, Red. 5, 4, 3. No, forget it. We're not even going to go there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Now, just before the break, I broke you the news that Mohammed Ahmad's 20 years old and Mohammed Ahmad, 25, have been charged with actual bodily harm after a disturbance at Manchester Airport involving police officers in July. That's according to the Crown Prosecution Service. That's right, we waited half a year, but it has finally happened. And even better news, no police officers have been charged over the Manchester Airport incident. Common sense at last. Lots of you have already been sending me loads of messages about that, which I'm just going to enjoy all to myself, because the problem is, ladies and gents, is once there is a charge, we can't talk about it because it could prejudice the case. But let's just go whoop, whoop, and enjoy it, shall we? Because it really has taken a long time for common sense and justice. So, like I said, if we start banging on about this and talking about this and that and the other, that their lawyers could say, well, it's not a fair case now, is it? And then guess what? Justice won't be delivered, so let's just quietly celebrate in our hearts and in our souls. Let's also quietly celebrate, or vocally celebrate in our hearts and our souls, another decision by a judge, which is that trans children are not allowed to make gender treatment decisions without parents. The Courts of Appeal also says decisions over future treatment could be reviewed by a judge. Common sense at last. Again, let's speak to Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters and author of Transgender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. This is really good news, isn't it, Helen? Because essentially what's gone on here is there's a particular young child, a 16-year-old, a girl, who wanted gender reassignment treatment, and her mother really didn't want her to have it. And so it ended up in a court case where the teenager and the child's father had argued that decisions around cross-sex hormone treatment should be left to the child alone. And thankfully, the High Court has said, do you know what? Actually, parental oversight should be allowed. That's really good news, isn't it? The idea that a kid by themselves could say, I'm going to start this treatment. You can't drink alcohol at the age of 15, 16. Why on earth do you reckon children should be able to decide they want puberty blockers? I mean, thank goodness at last this has happened.
It is a significant case, absolutely. And what's really significant about it is that usually at age 16, children become competent to consent to medical treatment. And it's only if there's a reason to think, like, for example, that the child is mentally ill or is not mentally able to understand the issues, that she would turn to the parents to allow the treatment. And in this case, this 16-year-old, she is competent, she is mentally well, she's an intelligent young woman, and so on. And so the previous court said there couldn't be any basis for saying it's not her decision. And the appeal case said that the previous decision was made just after Dr. Hilary Cass's report had come out. And that in that report, it pointed out how there is absolutely no evidence underpinning the treatment pathway that is puberty blockers before 16, cross-sex hormones at 16 or onwards, and actually said that there should be a multidisciplinary case review for every 16 to 18-year-old who wanted to go on cross-sex hormones. So this is part of a long march back to sanity on the treatment of children who don't like being the sex that they actually are. Just another step, there's lots more to go. The mother has to go back to court again. Once the girl reaches 18, she'll be able to make the decision on her own. But basically, she wanted to get the hormones, she wanted to get testosterone from an online clinic, Gender Plus. And Gender Plus isn't set up to do the sort of multidisciplinary assessment that Dr. Hilary Cass said should happen before giving hormones to anybody. So, you know, let's see what it does. What it does is it does a few online consultations and then writes a prescription, you know. It's not anything about the mental health or anything like that. So, yeah, I don't know what the end state will be for this particular child, but it's yet another step in going back to saying that children who don't like being the sex that they are can't just be told they can change sex. It's not possible, and there's no evidence base for the hormone treatment.
How many people in the future do you think are going to end up bringing court cases against doctors, against teachers, saying, I was too young to make this decision. I pursued treatment because at the time I read things on Instagram or whatnot and I thought this is what I wanted to do, but now I've irreversibly damaged my body. Do you reckon there's going to be a scandal in the future akin to, say, I don't know, the infected blood scandal or other medical scandals that we have had, when essentially treatment's been given to young children that was deeply inappropriate?
I mean, it's already happening in America, that's been handing out puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to minors for a lot longer than we have, and a lot more freely. And we're already seeing court cases there on exactly that basis, even though in America it's quite hard to get these cases through if you did say that you consented. I mean, there's even people trying to take cases under consumer fraud, basically false advertising. I was reading a post by a young woman the other day who had taken testosterone and had her breasts removed, and the fact was she was self-harming at the time when she was diagnosed as really being a boy and had her breasts removed. And she said, I was already cutting myself. You helped me to cut deeper. I got shivers when I read that. She's suing at the moment. So yes, this is coming. This is absolutely coming, because there is no evidence that this makes people feel better. And it's definitely bad for their health in all sorts of ways. It has irreversible impacts, including on their fertility.
Do you know, I actually often think this is akin to some of the sort of ghoulish treatments that happened in asylums in the Victorian era, where people were getting lobotomies for PTSD and stuff like that. It is a mental health condition. It's just even if it's actually genuine dysphoria, it is a psychological condition. Surely one shouldn't treat psychological conditions with surgeries. That, to me, is absolutely mad. Good news that, of course, there's been an indefinite ban on the use of puberty blockers by children wanting to change their gender on the grounds that the drugs pose an unacceptable safety risk. Yet cross-sex hormone treatment, which is what was being sought in this particular case, is not covered by that edict. Should it be the case now that, you know, as a country, we should be looking at whether children can take, you know, cross-sex hormones?
Well, the NHS doesn't give them and hasn't given them under 16, and post-Hilary Cass, basically hardly anyone is going to get them on the NHS between 16 and 18. The issue here was that the child was going to a private provider, and that private provider, what it does is it has an overseas element that does the assessment, and then it refers to a local private provider for the whole hormone prescription. And Dr. Cass said really quite clearly in her report, though it was kind of out of scope because her report was on the NHS, that this was the next thing that needed to be looked at. I hope Wes Streeting, who has shown immense courage and leadership on this issue and has stood fast on the puberty blockers ban, despite all sorts of horrific rhetoric about how he'll be responsible for children killing themselves by grown-ups who really should know better than to say that sort of thing. I hope he now looks at the private provision of hormones to people under 18. Because, actually, do you know what? People under 25, because as Hilary Cass said in her report, our brains don't mature until we're about 25. Young people are very risk-taking. They don't think about their long-term future. They don't think they might want children. They don't think through all the things that they might regret when they're 40, 50, 60.
No, I agree. I often wonder where all of this stuff came from, Helen. I think it's really quite cynical and really quite strange that this wasn't really anything we spoke about 10 years ago, and then it sort of started dominating the news agenda. It became a huge culture war. Culture wars are good. If it wasn't for culture wars, people like they'd still be abusing children with this horrible practice. But what instigated all of this?
Oh, really hard to answer, but I mean, crazy ideas on American campuses and social media is my short version. I mean, kids radicalize each other online, and there's a social contagion here. I mean, one of the striking facts that came out in this court case is the girl who is 16 is living with her father and had a stepmother. And her partner is another girl who identifies as a boy, who's her stepmother's child. So, the two of them have obviously decided together that they're boys, or at least that would be my guess from the reading between the lines. Obviously, the child is not identified, and that's completely correct. What are the odds? What are the odds that these two girls both had some amazingly rare mental health condition? Isn't it more likely that, they have together made a strange understanding about the world that has been encouraged by social media.
Right, and isn't this the problem here? Because gender dysphoria, which once upon a time only existed in far less than even 1% of the population, it's something like 0.3%, if that, has always predominantly been a male condition. It's why when you get a lot of these, trans rights matters people out on the streets, they tend to be blokes in dresses. It tends to be something that has various overlaps of fetishes, but largely affects men. And yet 3/4 of the young people presenting at gender clinics were girls. Don't we need to have a conversation about young girls in all of this, and why societally lots of young women no longer want to be women?
Oh, completely. I mean, men who identify as women and girls who identify as boys are doing completely different things, and yet they're all rolled up together under the idea that they have a trans identity and they're suffering from gender dysphoria. As you say, for adult men, it's very much associated with a fetish for cross-dressing and a desire to present as a woman for sexual gratification. And in teenage girls, it's part of a cluster of social and mental conditions that are to do with self-harm, eating disorders, autism, wanting to identify out of being a girl because that's a very pornified thing to be, thinking that boys have it easier, that all sorts of things. They're just completely different things, and they're both very socially mediated. So the treatment pathway that was created for men, I don't approve of it. I don't think that we should be giving men estrogen and cutting off body parts and then telling them that they can go out and pretend that they're women and women will go along with it. But at least it was a treatment pathway that was for them. And now this treatment pathway is being used for sad teenage girls.
Yeah, no, it's evil. It is pure evil. Helen, thank you ever so much. Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters and author of Transgender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. I've got a little theory, right? So hear me out on this. As Helen was saying, a lot of these young girls, especially, who wind up thinking, I'd much rather be a boy, tend to be influenced by stuff they've seen on social media, and the algorithms then push them into wormholes, especially TikTok, but Instagram as well, push them into wormholes where they get bombarded by this imagery, bombarded by this messaging, and they end up going, yeah, do you know what, I want to go and have top surgery, as it's called, and I want puberty blockers and this, that and the other. I mean, my little theory here is something that's happened in the past 10 years is the cult of Kardashian. And they're famous basically for just being on social media, aren't they? And what do? Do they sing? Do they act? No, they're just things on social media. And when you look at the Kardashians, how many pharmaceutical products are sold off the back of them? All of the lip fillers, the Botox. I mean, they basically are just shilling for, big cosmetic companies, aren't they? And isn't it funny that you got all these Kardashians, all beginning with the letter K, and then what pops up? Oh, the trans dad. And then all of a sudden, on the front of Time magazine or whatever it is. And I'm like, what is going on here? What is the relationship between social media, the dot-com world, Silicon Valley, Big Pharma, and then the Kardashians in the middle? I don't know. I just think it's all sort of interconnected somehow. Right, we're going to take a short break now, but when I come back, I want to have a conversation with you. So why don't you pick up the blower? 03444 99 1000 is the number to dial if you want to be patched through to the studio. 8722 is the number to text. Remember to talk before your text, so it hits the masks on top of Talk Towers. You can WhatsApp me on the long one as well, 03444 99 1000, or we're on X at talkTV. I'm back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. Shall we rattle through some of your messages? And before we do that, actually, let's have a little voiceo, because I love those. Take it away, Kev in Stafford.
Morning, Alex. Happy birthday for Boxing Day. It's Kev from Stafford here. Brendan Chilton says that it's too early to judge whether the budget is causing the economy to collapse because it's only been a couple of months or something like that. Yet the economy apparently collapsed on the same day that Kwasi Kwarteng announced his budget when he was Chancellor under Liz Truss. So what's good for the goose must be good for the gander, eh? Happy Christmas all, bye.
Happy Christmas all, bye. Great message, Kev. And you know what? This whole sort of concept that Liz Truss crashed the economy, she didn't. That's not what happened at all. She tried to blimmin' cut taxes, and then the cohort tried to, got together and decided that they didn't want taxes cut. Ganged up on her. Would have been nice to have those taxes cut, wouldn't it? Bring back Liz Truss, I say. Let's speak to Bob, who's in Hampshire. Hi, Bob.
Hi, mate. How you going?
Hello there. I don't know what that was at the start of that message, but hi, Bob. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm beginning to liven up. I've had about 45 cups of tea, beginning to see stars in the corners of my eyes. But, yeah, doing good. What do you want to talk about, my darling?
I think there's a bit of a misconception of how this country is run. In as much that you can have appointed and voted in governments like Labour, Lib Dems, Conservative, blah, blah, blah. But I think the real issue we've got with this country is the fact of the civil service.
Right.
Now, not many people want to touch on this subject because they may think that they're going to become a target of some sort of revenge back. That's a bit of a strong word to use, but my background is that I'm an ex-serving member of the Royal Navy, and I've been a self-employed carpenter for the last 48 years. Right. And I've paid all my taxes, my national insurance, my Class 4, which a lot of people don't know what Class 4 is. It's a tax on your profit.
Yeah. But I mean, look, let's go back to the original point here, which is essentially you're saying that the civil service have way too much power. Do you know, I have heard this. I've heard this from two former prime ministers now who say there's one thing about, things you say in a manifesto and getting into office, but when you get there, guess what? The intransigent mob on Whitehall will stop you doing anything you want to do. And, you just think, why don't you just say no? You've got, we're the government. You do as we say. I don't get it. Maybe one day someone's going to come into power and do what Donald Trump threatens to do with Doge and drain the swamp. In fact, didn't Kemi Badenoch, or was it Robert Jones? Someone recently has said that we need a Doge in the UK, and I think Bob there in Hampshire probably agrees with that one. Let's do some messages now. Oh, here we go. Simon from Canterbury. Now, we can't talk about this story, but it says we all know Manchester 2 were charged, and we have Reform to thank for that. Now, of course, that is because they were going to bring a private prosecution. So maybe that did actually push the CPS into doing something. Who knows? Now, talking about, we were talking a bit earlier about the civil service and waste and how inefficient this country has become. If anything defines that, it's HS2. I cannot tell you how much I hate HS2. I was so angry about it this morning. I said to my producer, Ted, HS2 disgusts me. It's absolutely ridiculous. Apparently, the new chief executive of HS2 Limited has said that he can't apologise for complying with the law as he defended spending £100 million of taxpayers' money, £100 million, to build a bat tunnel. He conceded it was an extraordinary amount of money had been spent on the barrier in Ancient Woodland in Buckinghamshire to comply with the law on protected species. Now, I'm going to give you some HS2 facts now, because I like HS2 facts, because nothing riles me up more than this. HS2 was proposed in 2009. Since then, we've spent £27 billion. £27 billion on HS2, and it still doesn't exist, right? Now, do you know what's happened in that time, since 2009? Netflix has been invented. Uber has been invented, Zoom calls and teleconferencing has been invented, Instagram was invented, smart speakers like your Alexa or whatever, they've been invented, cryptocurrency's been invented, 50% of Dubai has been built, 50% of Dubai built, and in China they have built 40,000 kilometres of high-speed railway. Well, mad thing is, after spending £27 billion, arguably, we don't even need it anymore. Now we can all do Zoom calls. Let's speak to Michael Gross, who was a former owner of the Euston site. Michael, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, well, should we scrap HS2? After spending £27 billion, we ought to see something of it by now. So scrapping it seems like the wrong idea. But it's just, it makes a mockery of this country, does it not?
Well, I think you have to understand that HS2 is a Ponzi scheme. It was conceived in a way that it could never be realized. And if you watch the abysmal proceedings by the Public Accounts Committee yesterday, you saw all these people who've wasted not the figure you did, but nearer 100 billion, stand there having lied to successive public accounts committees over the years and saying, oh, we're going to reset it. And from now on, we who have messed it up are going to make it all right again. I mean, I've never seen anything more ridiculous in my life. HS2 will never be built. We will run out of money. And like every Ponzi scheme, they keep it going so that they won't be shown up as the authors of a criminal conspiracy.
I mean, that's pretty strong words, but I'm minded to agree. The amount of people, from consultants to planners to I don't know who else, who have essentially lined their pockets on not building anything. Now the northern leg of it's going to be scrapped anyway, so what's the blimmin' point of it? Now it's going to start not even in London, but in some train station I've never even heard of. It disgusts me. It really disgusts me. And like I said, other countries looking at us must think we're absolutely, for want of a better phrase, bat crazy. We're talking about bat tunnels. And like I said, 50% of Dubai has been constructed in the time since we said we were going to build a high-speed railway. Zoom didn't exist. Now it does. We don't even need it anymore. I mean, do you think that, you were calling it a criminal enterprise, essentially. Do you think that actually people should face criminal proceedings about this absolute mockery?
Of course they should. But Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of Police, said there's no reason to investigate. And Lisa Ostrowski, formerly head of the SFO, who were given this information 6 years ago, said they wouldn't investigate. Shapps, when Secretary of State for Transport, when we gave him the figures, which we now know are out in the open, but we gave it to him years ago, said he did not recognize the figures. This is a giant honeypot, and there are a lot of sticky fingers in it via the supply chain to the people who are committed to keep it going. And, it's all very well to talk about bats, but that's really de minimis. It's nothing. We should talk about the pensioners who will die because they haven't got heating relief. We should talk about the people the crimes that will be committed because they're cutting 2,000 policemen. Yesterday in Parliament, the Prime Minister said that the wispy claims for equalisation on their pensions was unaffordable. Somehow, HS2 is always affordable. So we have to ask, why are these people doing such obviously stupid and dishonest things?
Yeah. Well, I mean, looking at this here, apparently there's a report published on Monday, and HS2 Limited estimated that the cost of building the railway would be it could be £83 billion. Now, if £27 billion has already been spent, by basic mathematics, 83 billion plus 27 billion is over 100 billion pounds for a blimmin' train that don't really go anywhere.
But you know, you with respect, the Oakerview report, which was not independent but was made half honest by Lord Berkeley, talked about 106 for phase one. There is nothing else but phase one. There isn't even phase one into Euston. They held a phony bid process and awarded it to Lend-Lease, who couldn't put a brick in the ground, and they're still talking about Lend-Lease. Every announcement on HS2 by the Department of Transport and HS2 Limited is a lie and has been shown to be a lie for the last 12 years. And for Bernadette Kelly to stand up and say that she and Wild and the others don't know what it's going to cost, the same week as they're putting out figures where they say they know what it's going to cost. Why that woman is in post, I don't know. And the new minister, Heidi Alexander, who doesn't know anything about railways, is making, when she talked about why government had to make hard choices, she studiously avoided talking about HS2. We are in a really bad place with this government, as we were with the last. Let me not appear to be party politically biased. Our establishment is broken, and I honestly don't know what the solution is.
I mean, this to me is absolutely emblematic of how broken it is. It's absolutely 100 billion on a railway that apparently that the timelines for running trains between Old Oak Common, the station no one's ever heard of in West London, that no one's going to be able to get to from anywhere else in the country because no one's ever heard of that blimmin' station, and Birmingham by 2032 were under pressure, but the outer limit was for 2030.
Not going to be 32. It's going to be in the 40s.
By the time this train even exists, we're going to have invented time travel, for crying out loud. It really makes £100 billion. It's not exactly a small sum of money when what they're apparently getting from farmers.
But it's going to end up 300 million.
Oh,
and
don't.
They haven't included funding costs. They haven't included the losses, the subsidy. They've never uttered the word subsidy. This is the most obvious fraud, and the establishment, the Public Accounts Committee under Meg Hillier, the Public Accounts Committee under Clifton Brown, how they couldn't ask this woman why she's still there, I have no idea.
Oh, you and me both. Michael Gross, thank you ever so much. It really gets my goat, HS. 100 billion or even 300 billion. That's our money. We've been robbed. We've been robbed and we've been lied to for a make-believe blimmin' train. It makes me sick to the core. It really does. Right, we're going to take a short break now, but when I come back, it's time for you to throw in your 2 bits. 0344 499 1000 is the number on WhatsApp to send me a message there, or to leave me a voice note there, or indeed the number to call if you want to be patched through to the studio. 8722 is the number for text message. Right talk before your text. We're on X at talkTV. I'm back after this.
about delivering. What does he mean?
Yeah, I mean, you speak privately to senior figures in the government and they will admit, for instance, that the winter fuel payment announcement certainly could have been handled more differently, and it probably was a bad choice in the first place. I mean, that was within days of entering government. He set down a marker that they were taking winter fuel payments of millions of pensioners, and they've never really recovered from that. They've been on the back foot ever since. So there's been numerous missteps, I think, since they came to power.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, is there anybody in the Labour Party who hasn't said deeply horrible, offensive and nasty things about Donald Trump? Is there? Is there? Well, one would hope. Lord Mandelson hasn't done it because he's now the US ambassador. Oh, well, that would be wishful thinking, wouldn't it? Of course he said something. Shall we find out what he has said? Well, he didn't hold back. He described Donald Trump as a danger to the world. Little short of a white nationalist and racist. That's going to go down well. He's saying that Donald Trump would never be seen to embody British values. Apparently this was in an interview with an Italian journalist in 2019. Well, there you go. That's really going to work out well when that hits the White House. And believe you me, there'll be people who tell Donald Trump, because him and Mr. Musk don't seem to like this government at the moment. Don't take it from me, though, that Lord Mandelson has said this kind of thing. How about we hear from the horse's mouth?
With an American president who is little short of a white nationalist and racist. Even those who have a sneaking admiration for Donald Trump because of the strength of his personality nonetheless regard him as reckless and a danger to the world.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen, the new ambassador to America. Woo! That's the right man for the job, isn't it? That's going to go down well. I do hope that little clip goes viral online. I do hope it starts circulating and swirling around the outer regions of X. I do hope that it's brought to the attention of one Secretary of State for Doge, whatever he's called, Mr. Musk. I really do hope that reaches the ears of the president, because I am sick to death of all these people queuing up to be the big I am, to make their sneering, snarring comments about Donald Trump, because it thinks it makes them look virtuous, because they think it showers them with self-righteousness and moral superiority. And now look, it's called karma. It comes back to bite you. And do you think they say the same things about, I don't know, President Xi? Oh, no, they just want to go and do nice relationships with China, don't they? Despite actual Labour camps. Oh, no, we're going to buy all of our windmills and our glass solar panels and stuff from factories where slaves are used. Oh, yeah, no, but we must be nice to President Xi. Yeah. Donald Trump, however, racist, white nationalist, a danger to the world. There you go. That is the new American ambassador. That took all of about, 2 hours for that to suddenly emerge. Who would have thought? I don't think there's anybody in the Labour Party who could be doing that job, because I think they've all queued up to talk about Donald Trump because they think it makes them look good. It makes you look like morons. Let's talk to Caroline in London. Hi, Caroline.
Oh, hi, Alex. Thanks for taking my call. I can't tell you how happy I am that you spoke to Michael Gross. Now, I'm not as eloquent as you, but if you'd allow me to try and make some points.
Oh, go for it. That's what this is all about.
I listened to Michael Gross talk to Tootsie last night. He made the announcement about what's going on. I actually didn't sleep. The fact that it's a Ponzi scheme. And, this makes me think the whole climate change of the Ponzi scheme. And basically, this goes way back before Labour. Our taxes are going to make these conglomerate companies richer and richer and richer, and we get nothing back. We have been conned for decades, and it's just coming out. And, you know, I don't know what the answer is. The answer is everyone needs to stop paying taxes to this country until it's sorted out, because our taxes aren't going anywhere to help us. The only people that seem to be making money are corrupt councillors, because I can tell you stories about that. The civil service is completely out of control. The MPs and the big conglomerates. And we are just little nothing slaves. There's no law in this country anymore, especially under this government. We've got nowhere to go. I never thought we'd be talking about Sharia law in this country like we've been talking about in the last few days. The LBG...
The alphabet people.
Thank you. Where do you stop? Every day there's something coming out. And I'm really struggling. This is starting to really affect me. And the only thing that keeps me safe is talkTV, where I can phone up and speak my mind and be heard. But my worry is the mainstream media. People still are watching it. Not as many.
The legacy media is what we like to call them. Because, you know,
and that's my concern.
Because we're mainstream.
Well, no, I wouldn't compare you to Sky News, thank you.
Yeah, no one watches Sky News anymore. It's just up at railway stations and in a few hotel lobbies.
Problem. I very quickly, I was in a store yesterday, I don't know if I can mention their name, and a lovely young guy was obviously doing a Saturday job or whatever, putting out the milk on the shelves, and I said, I hope you're not going to drink that milk. And he said, what do you mean? So I started telling him about Beauvais. We got talking. I told him he's got to subscribe to talkTV and, you know, all the ultimate, and, you know, trying to educate these young kids that have got no idea what's going on. No idea. And that is terrifying. And I just hope that talkTV can... I don't know what the answer is, Alex. I just had to phone you. This HSBC, it's so horrific.
It's ridiculous. It's almost 300 billion. We've been mugged. We've been absolutely mugged. Caroline, thank you so much. Your support's so lovely.
Hello.
Oh, Caroline, thank you. I'm going to leave it there, my darling, because let's try and see if we can squeeze in one more call before I go to break and speak to Herbie, who's in London. What a great name, Herbie. Do you know, I remember the film Herbie. Wasn't it like a little beetle or something? Like used to race
Alex.
Yeah. I've forgotten about that film until now. None of my Tech Up Dave knows it because he's as old as Methuselah, but everyone else behind the glass panel's going like, what? I don't know, what's Herbie? Children. Anyway, how are you, Herbie?
Very well, thank you. A bit cold this morning, but okay. A little bit, you know, a bit disgusted with the government at the moment. I mean, say they've lost the plot. They're uncontrollable. They're doing what they like. They're taking democracy away. They're going to hijack the local elections because they're afraid of losing.
Oh my goodness, I cannot believe this. I cannot. I've had a few cups of tea and I've had a few sort of children's sweets and I've perked up now, haven't I? I cannot believe that the fact that, you know, I've worked on various election campaigns around the world, right? And people always say that they do balmy things over in certain developing world countries. But this government, this IPPR, this think tank, which is basically a Blairite thing, a Blair thing, suddenly does a little reporting. Oh, you know, I think there's a problem with foreign enterprises who are paying, you know, giving money to UK political parties. And then this goes to the Electoral Commission. Then all of a sudden, Sir Keir Starmer goes, oh, well, I think we better look into that. I think we better stop that from happening. Oh, nothing to do with the fact that Elon Musk said he might donate to Reform. Oh, no. Then, of course, Reform might do really well in the local elections next year. And they're like, well, we haven't decided if we're going to have unitary councils or unitary authorities anymore, so maybe we just won't even have those elections. That is corruption to the bone. I would be aghast. I'd be astonished if this isn't all interconnected. And it's messing with democracy. It's rigging the political system. It's shocking.
Exactly.
Oh, Herbie.
Well,
darling, I've got to go because I'm running out of time now. Herbie in London, thank you ever so much. Going to take a short break now, but I'm with you till 1 o'clock, so don't go anywhere. I am back just after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the programme. Alex Phillips here with you all the way through until 1 o'clock. I'll say all the way through. I've done 2 hours already. But with you for another hour. So do stay and keep me company. 03444 991,000 is the number to dial if you want to actively keep me company rather than passively keep me company. I know you're there. I know you're listening. And I really, really want to tell you something. I think you're wonderful. I really like you. You are so... Your taste is immaculate. You're intelligent. You're patriotic. The world would be a completely different place if you weren't in the equation. That one domino that is you taken out would ruin everything, like the butterfly effect. That is how much I love you, dear listener, dear viewer. You are a legend. Now, if you want to give me a call, the number is 03444 991,000 and keep me company. I do like it. 8722 is the number on the text. Remember to talk before your text, or you can WhatsApp me as well on the big long number. Right, let's talk now. I mean, there's not a day that goes by when some sort of illegal immigrant hasn't done something utterly abhorrent and we just go, what is the world coming to? Well, this time there's an illegal immigrant who said he was a teenager when he violently assaulted a worker during a robbery in Berkshire. And then he lied about his age. He was jailed this week for almost 5 years following a trial at Reading Crown Court. Karandeep Singh is his name. Why don't we just send him home? Anyway, he said he was 18 years old when he left a member of staff at a Wick store, hardware store in Slough, with a head wound on May the 25th last year. He carried out the attack with 34-year-old Satwant Singh after a member of staff challenged them as they tried to nick stuff from the shop. So this Karandeep Singh failed to turn up for his trial. He was then arrested on warrant. He pretended he wasn't Karandeep Singh, although fingerprint evidence proved it to be a lie, wasting precious police time. The court heard how the two men went to the store, were recognised by staff who had seen them acting suspiciously, tried to nick some bits, challenged by a store worker named Morgan Duffy. The co-defendants initially claimed he was going to pay for it, but then brazenly walked out without doing so. Anyway, he said he was aged 19 when he violently assaulted the shop worker and basically said, oh, you know, it's just teenage passions. I was just, you know, what it's like when you're 19. You just go, you're whacking people over the head with spirit levels, so please don't send me to prison. Why aren't we sending these people home? That's what I want to know. I just, you know, yes, I believe that people should face justice, but really, at the cost of, is that 40 grand a year, the cost of each inmate? Why don't you save us, the taxpayer, that money? If he does do the whole 5 years, and let's be fair, with Sir Keir Starmer, he's probably going to be out next week, isn't he, in time for Christmas? He'll be out, won't he, because he didn't put a racist thing on the internet or something. But anyway, if he does do the whole 5 years, that's probably about £200,000 or something he's going to cost us. Why? Far less money to stick him on a flight from whence he came. Let's speak now to Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. I mean, these things, it just makes a mockery of our entire system, doesn't it, Robert?
It really does. And let's break down exactly what this chap has done. He's broken into our country. He's attempted to commit theft. It sounds like the shop worker's already had a few suspicions about him already, so he might have been doing it previously. He's then committed a really, really serious assault on a shop worker, trying to do the right thing and stop theft from taking place. He's lied about his age in court, which is contempt of court. And then we find out as well that he's already got 3 other aliases on the police national computer. So he's clearly been running foul of the law previously as well. So this is a chap that isn't just a one-off, and it isn't just a flight of passion, as he seems to claim, but he's clearly involved in some really kind of systemic activities here. You talk about deporting him, and sadly, I really, really doubt that we'll be in a position or will actually take those steps to remove him from our country. We just know that that is not a measure that gets taken. We've got 10,000 foreign nationals in British prisons at the moment that frankly shouldn't be here at all. They should be removed as soon as they commit their crime and get found guilty, but that just doesn't happen. And what we are facing is, as well as the cost, as soon as he's released, he will undoubtedly go back into the community, and the likelihood is that he'll offend again. So this is a serious, serious failing of the state that's taking place as well, the fact that there were 3 previous run-ins with the law, at least, that he's undertaken.
3 previous aliases as well. So he's pretending to be all these different people going around biffing people over the head, nicking stuff, committing crimes. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Look, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but one assumes, as he's called Karandeep Singh, he could well be from India, a country where there is no war, there is no conflict. This underlines the point, doesn't it? That when people go, oh, they're all refugees, oh, these poor people, they just want a better life. A load of people coming over on those boats are coming because they're ne'er-do-wells. Dodgy people commit crimes, and breaking into a country is committing a crime. Paying criminals money to get you somewhere is a crime. Most of the people coming on those boats, I'm pretty sure, are not refugees. I think we all know that. And I think this just underscores the fact that those routes are being used by criminal gangs to get their little criminal apparatchiks, their little foot soldiers, into this country.
He's a chance for it, and it does seem that he has kind of found a place within a network. You know, he's working with an accomplice on this. It's probably not the first time they've shoplifted a few spirit levels and things like that and then sold them on the black market. The thing that really struck me, though, was the defence lawyer's kind of appeal to the sympathies of the judge. He was saying that, you know, this chap had come to the country, he'd broken our laws, yes, let's put that to one side, but he'd hoped to make a better life for himself and his kid and wife, and therefore we should feel nothing but the utmost sympathy for him, especially because apparently he was homeless whilst he was here as well. He'd come into the country illegally and not been able to find himself a solid residence. So the appeals that were being made during the trial as well, it really, really shows where the judicial system is and where our lawyers, a large number of the legal community's mindset is when it comes to these kind of cases, which it's not about this is a chap that has broken the law on several occasions by entering the country legally and then committing theft, but it's more about, oh, are we doing the right thing by them? Are they okay? Are we respecting their human rights? And that is where we're going wrong. And you know, the spiral that seems to be taking place here is astronomical. Between 2018 and 2022, I think there were about 40,000 foreign national offenders released from prison back into the communities, at least committed 10 other offences prior to that as well. So this is where we are at a country. We're not able to remove illegal migrants that have committed crime and legal migrants that are committing crime.
It's absolutely astonishing. I mean, maybe listen to the stuff that I feel sorry sometimes for defending barristers. You know, we have a legal system where everybody deserves legal representation, and, you know, barristers don't have to be best friends or like the people they work for. But sometimes the things they come out with, the defending barrister, Tobias Smith, he sounds like a barrister, doesn't he? Claims he was instructed by Singh to put his birth date of 2005. But then he turns around and he goes, because 2005 would make him just under 20. And then he turns around and goes, oh yeah, he'd taken a journey in the hope he'd build a better life for himself and bring his wife and his 5-year-old son over to the UK. So they're basically suggesting that this man sort of fathered a child at the age of about 14. Even that just doesn't add up. It makes an absolute mockery of everything.
Exactly. I mean, I think if the lawyer has kind of knowingly gone down that route as well and put down a date of birth that he perhaps realises isn't the truth, there needs to be questions asked about him as well. But we need to recognise that far too many lawyers in this country now, especially those that work in the human rights realm, and although that isn't the case in this situation, many of them are more concerned with what they see as a social justice crusade and doing right by some higher calling towards these ideas of human rights and liberalism and justice in their sense of the word, which is not really the justice that we would perhaps hold in this country. And that means that effectively the rule of law is being undermined by those people that see themselves as these crusaders, as it were, and aren't actually following the letter of the law, but following more their own moral compass. And that's an incredibly dangerous position to have.
Or lack thereof when it comes to the moral compass, I would say. Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, thank you ever so much. Always good catching up with you. Let's speak now to Myral Senthilnathan, who is a commentator, a great man indeed. I've been blessed with his presence on more than one occasion here in the studios. Today, though, I think I've got him down the line. How are you doing, Myron?
I'm doing well, Alex. Good to be with you.
Well, every single day there seems to be something else, a legal immigrant who's committed some kind of a crime. Now, I don't want to besmirch all illegal immigrants with criminal behaviour, but there does seem to be a little relationship between people who pay people traffickers to come over on boats and essentially commit a crime breaking into a country and then go on to, commit more crimes.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about this case earlier, and the first thing that should go into people's mind is the word deportations. He shouldn't be going to prison. He should be deported. That has to be the default principle of the Home Office, and it's somehow quite astounding how deportations are just shoved to one side. I mean, if you look at Germany is deporting people to Afghanistan, part of the ECHR, part of the EU, and it's actually shifting people over to Afghanistan. So Britain is now becoming the slowest person in the class when it comes to going to the policy of deportations. When Trump comes into power, it'll be mass deportations. They're working on a policy of, if you come to the country and your first act is to break the law, you do not belong here. And there is a massive issue going on here. The Oxford University have done a study, and they basically said there's about 750,000 illegal immigrants in the country, and that's an underestimate. Other analysts have put it at 1.2 million. Now, we have something like 22 to 29% of illegal immigrants in Europe are actually in this country. That is shocking.
And actually, if over 1 million people are illegal immigrants, that kind of makes about 1 in 70 of the population an illegal immigrant.
Yes, exactly. So there is an emerging society of illegal immigrants that are present in this country, and with a black economy, and you talked about Sharia courts. I mean, sometimes even a judicial system potentially that's completely at odds with the British society, and it's quite astounding how this has happened. And then you had Angela Eagle was in an interview recently, and she was asked, she said openly, we don't know the undocumented migrants that have come in, essentially saying we don't know what we don't know, which basically means even these figures are probably not accurate. It could be astronomically much greater. And so you've got people like Rupert Lowe, MP of Reform, who are really pushing hard to find the figures, because this is costing us, what, $6 billion a year in terms of illegal migration alone. And we don't even know what is happening to these illegal migrants. We don't even know the reoffending. We don't even know the welfare costs. We don't know any of these things. There's no transparency. So they're taking our money off pensioners, off farmers, giving to illegal migrants, and we don't even have the transparency to know how it's being spent. So it's ludicrous.
Yeah, I mean, as well as just sticking them up in hotels and spending a load of cash money on, I don't know, giving them a roof over their heads and Wi-Fi and food and pocket money and all the rest of it. More worrying to me than that is who these people, what are they connected to? Because we know full well that criminal gangs run people trafficking cartels, or even terrorist organisations. It's how they make the most part of their money. Once upon a time, terrorist organisations relied on international drugs trade to line their pockets. Well, these days, the international human trafficking trade makes even more money than drugs. And so we know that this is where the Hezbollahs of this world and the Al-Qaedas make their money. And so it's fair to say that if they wanted to get their terrorists into this country or any other country, this is the way that they'd be doing it. It absolutely beggars belief. And, I hope you're right. I hope Donald Trump is successful in his mass deportation and leads the world on this front, because we really could do with that sort of political cover to then do the same ourselves. And that maybe this is the sort of thing that our brand new US ambassador could go and say to Donald Trump, congratulations, sir, you're a really stand-up gentleman. I think your policies are really fantastic. Please tell us how we can do the same. Except I very much doubt that that is something that Lord Mandelson would do.
With an American president who is little short of a white nationalist and racist. Even those who have a sneaking admiration for Donald Trump because of the strength of his personality nonetheless regard him as reckless and a danger to the world.
Oh, shut up, you absolute blockhead, you absolute vile little moron. I cannot believe you're going to be the one going over to America and representing us. You're the reckless one, you mouthing off like that, and then all of a sudden, oh, look, you found yourself to be the ambassador to America. Why did you take the job if you hate him so much? Well, let's listen now to when he was interviewed by our very own JHB back in July, the day after the election.
Fancy returning to the front line as Foreign Secretary?
I am going to return. I am going to return.
To
the people from whence I came. By which I don't mean Hartlepool, and I'm very glad we regained Hartlepool last night, but I'm going to go back to the sheep and the cattle and the horses where I live in the countryside.
Will you take a job in the Labour
I
front
will
bench?
do absolutely anything and everything to help support this government.
Yes, isn't it?
Short of taking a job in the government.
You will categorically, you will not take a job if offered?
I'm not lining up to do a job.
Very non-committal there.
Want to help the government, do you? Maybe learn to mind your language. It's just unbelievable. Myron, what are your thoughts on Mandelson? Oh, Mandy, he's back. The man's got more political lives than Rasputin. What do you think about him being our new US ambassador?
Look, he's a very astute politician, and he's gone there because he's probably the only person who can give the kind of charm offensive that we need for the country. But obviously, look, when you have this kind of stuff going on, I mean, the whole front bench, the whole Labour Party have got blood on their hands. And it's going to be so difficult now. This is going to go viral. I'm sure it's going to go viral. And I think when Mandelson goes there, he's going to look into Trump's eyes. Trump's going to look into his eyes. There's going to be no bromance going on there. There's going to be no chemistry going on there. So those little kind of edges that we need in the deal, the kind of little pushes, those little nudges that we need because he has this affection for us, I think that that's going to be compromised slightly. So Trump is going to realise that fundamentally, this Labour Party is ideologically wedded to a whole different paradigm of how governance should work, how a country should be. And so they're at loggerheads with each other. And I'm thinking, why doesn't Nigel Farage come in? It'll be fantastic. But of course, the bromance between Nigel Farage and Donald Trump would be so strong. And Keir Starmer with his kind of AI, cheap bot, charisma would be completely dwarfed by that. And so if he was Tony Blair, I think Tony Blair could do it. I think Tony Blair could get someone like Nigel Farage in and say, I'm playing it in a national interest, and it could potentially work. But Keir Starmer, no way. So we're stuck with Mandelson. We're stuck with these comments, and I just hope it's not too damaging.
Well, I hope it's not too damaging, but the US ambassador before that, the last US ambassador, Lord Darroch, Sir Kim Darroch, sorry, didn't really suffer a positive fate, did he, when it transpired that, cables were leaked in which he had been saying pretty unpleasant things about Donald Trump? Well, he didn't last in the job, so maybe Mandelson won't even make it to Washington. Who knows? Myron, thank you ever so much, Myron at Senthil Nathan there. Now, we're going to take a little break now, but, I'm going to enjoy this next interview. Greg Swenson, chairman of the Republicans Overseas, is going to be joining us after this.
Anything like this before? I mean, I don't know enough about your history, really, but, I mean, have you ever done anything like this, and was it hard finding a place to record it and put it out there?
No, I've never done anything like this at all, Mike, and to be honest, the whole thing, I basically made it from my computer at home. I hired a guy to do the vocals. He had his own booth. He did that. He sent them to me. I hired a second guy to do the video, and then I did all the work in between, putting it together and producing the track just at home, basically. So it was all just done essentially in my bedroom.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, I've got a little short message that someone's messaged me here, actually, and says, post that clip about Peter Mandelson on social media so we can make it go viral. So here we go. Hi, Donald. This is Alex Phillips over here in Little Britain. We love you. We are so glad you got elected. And to show our thanks for all that you're going to do to save the West, our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has chosen one of the greatest people you can imagine. Oh, this really experienced politician to come and be the ambassador. That's right. You get to hang out in the wonderful company of Lord Peter Mandelson. Now, a few things you need to know about Lord Peter Mandelson before he wends his way to Washington to host dinner parties and chat with your team about the special relationship. Fact number one, he loves the EU. He thinks the EU is absolutely brilliant. I know you totally agree with him on that, don't you? And also, yes, he also has a you in very high regards. This is what he said, actually. Let's have a listen.
With an American president who is little short of a white nationalist and racist. Even those who have a sneaking admiration for Donald Trump because of the strength of his personality nonetheless regard him as reckless and a danger to the world.
There you go, Donald. That is the new UK ambassador over in America. Merry Christmas from all of us in Britain. Well, Greg Swenson joins me now, who's Republicans overseas. What a brilliant appointment he's turning out to be.
Yeah, someone didn't do their homework. I don't know if it's Keir or one of his staffers, but it's pretty outrageous. I mean, we had the problem with David Lammy from, his quotes from a few years ago. He's done his best to kiss and make up. He did his little tour in the fall to Washington. Had dinner, maybe that was in New York at Trump Tower, but this is a really bad idea, right? I mean, there has to be someone who didn't say really nasty things.
What, in the Labour Party?
Trump,
do you think
yeah,
so?
That's a good point.
Maybe they should have just stuck with someone from the diplomatic corps. That might have worked well.
Yeah.
But do you think this is going to have an impact, though? Because, what we saw is Donald Trump, people always go, oh, well, he's really bitter, he's this, he's that. I actually think Donald Trump's the sort of man who goes, fine, let bygones be bygones.
It depends. He does hold a grudge sometimes, but I don't think he will in this case, because as you pointed out, there's probably no one in Labour that didn't say something negative about him. But, it's one thing to be critical of your political opponents, but to call someone a racist or a white supremacist is pretty outrageous. And that's the kind of stuff you should be fired for. Now he's just been hired in a really important role. So it just doesn't make sense to me. I hope they get smart about it and change their mind.
Some might say it's a shame that Joe Biden isn't going to stay in office, because at least if it was Joe Biden, he would forget that those remarks were ever made.
Yeah.
Now this story, Greg.
It's outrageous.
It is shocking. Let's get the audience up to date with it. Yeah. Now, we all knew that old Joe was a bit gone, right? We know he was. Yeah. But the level at which there is a cover-up is absolutely insane. An explosive investigation, which is conducted by the Wall Street Journal, has exposed extensive and deliberate, years-long cover-up that saw the administration deliberately gaslighting anybody who dared to claim Biden's abilities had deteriorated since he was Barack Obama's vice president. What they are alleging in this, what they found out, is not even alleging, in their investigation, is that they knew that Biden was demented from day one.
Yeah, they did. And they knew it in the campaign as well. There was a note in the article about Jill Biden making more appearances in Iowa, a critical state in the primary process. She made more appearances than Joe did, and one of the staffers pointed that out in a good way, in a positive way, saying Jill is great, Dr. Jill. She's made all these appearances. And the boss told him to pipe it down, call the reporter back, and dial that whole conversation down, because they knew it would make Joe Biden look cognitively challenged, which he clearly was. So this goes back to the campaign. They knew it. They covered it up then. They kept him in the basement. They blamed COVID. And then from day one in the administration, this cover-up was massive. And I should note, everyone should read the Wall Street Journal. It's a fantastic article. It drives you crazy. It's really worrisome and troubling to read. But this is not the opinion pages of the Journal. This is the straight news people. So this is not biased. They're doing their job. They actually wrote a decent report. And because the Journal can be just as woke as a lot of the other papers on the news side. The op-ed people are not, but anyway, it's worth a read.
But what is shocking about this is how many people played a role in this cover-up. Because don't American presidents have to have medicals, basically, to make sure they're fit for office? If he was demented from day one, how on earth did he pass a medical? You've then got the situation, the mad situation, of when, just like Trump, he was accused of keeping hold of classified documents. Where the judge went, oh, well, you know, he's a man of a certain age, so we can't really hold him culpable.
Robert Hur.
Right. So if you can't be held culpable, you can't be the American president with executive powers.
And
Why? Well, the question is, why? When they could have picked this is a population of 300 million odd in America, and of all the people that could have been the Democrat candidate, they picked Sleepy Joe. What is going on?
Because they're obsessed with power, and they wanted to win, and it actually worked out well for the inner circle, because they got to be president, basically. I mean, the country was run by this cabal of inner circle people. And, you know, this is the worst cover-up maybe since Woodrow Wilson in 1919 and 1920, when his wife covered up the fact that he had a stroke. But in modern times, this is clearly the biggest cover-up. This makes Watergate look, you know, like a joke. And so, you know, it's outrageous that they did it, but they were quite deliberate about it. And that's what's really sickening about the article.
Right, and the other question is, why did journalists not... It's great that this article's been printed, right? Thank goodness it's been done, but this has been going on way too long. They've had years and years and years to look into this, and yet a lot of the media played the same part as the people in the cover-up.
They were in on the scam.
They were in on it.
Absolutely. They were so obsessed with a Democrat, didn't matter who, winning, that they covered up everything about Biden during the campaign and then continued to do it during the administration. So, you know, they basically they stopped being biased a long time ago. It's not bias, it's activist. They were clearly, basically, the Democratic Party communications department was the mainstream media in the U.S. It's really outrageous.
Now, people might go, well, you know what, poor old Joe, he's a bit old, he's a bit frail. But, you know, you've got the deep state. You could have anybody. You could have a, you know, dog in charge of as president, and the country would still work fine. The problem is, actually, that this isn't necessarily the case. I think one of the most shocking things about this whole cover-up has been relayed by Democratic Congressman Adam Smith. So, in 2021... when Smith was chair of the House Armed Services Committee, he tried desperately to get in touch with Joe Biden ahead of that bungled withdrawal from Afghanistan to tell him his serious concerns about the plan. Now, this is when they left Afghanistan, 13 US service members and 170 Afghans were killed. Now, he tried to speak to Joe Biden and say, look, mate, this is going to be a disaster. And guess what? His attempts were rebuffed. I mean... this is the way, you know, it's not like a Prime Minister in the United Kingdom where you've still got your cabinet and, you know, things are made by, a group of people sitting around a table and it's the leader of the biggest party. The President is the head of state in a sense that they have executive powers.
And the Commander-in-Chief. And so that role was farmed out to these unelected bureaucrats that were surrounding him. And so many mistakes were made. Biden was noted in the article of, they would use the term good days and bad days. So the Secretary of Defense, all the senior leadership around security and defense were told, sorry, he's having a bad day. That's code for he's got cognitive challenges and couldn't function. So we had a president who was cognitively impaired, and then he ran for president again, which was
crazy.
Sickening. And they covered up that as well. The press did a great job covering for the Democrat Party until it was not sustainable anymore after the famous June 27th debate. And the only reason they pulled him was because he was polling 5 points behind Trump. So, you know, they just
wanted this sort of like decrepit, demented, ventriloquist dummy. So people who are faceless, who are unelected, who are unaccountable, were actually in charge. It's sickening.
And don't feel sorry for Joe, because you could see his ego in play here. And the fact that he didn't volunteer to step aside and let someone else run for president, it just shows you the sheer power hungriness of of Joe Biden and his family, and Dr. Jill especially. So it's really insane that he even ran.
You answered all the questions, Joe.
That was so sad.
I mean, that was quite a revealing moment.
It was.
I mean, it's astonishing when you read some of the details in all of this, like when they were preparing him for that particular debate and they were trying to give him lines.
4 days,
Yeah, trying to say this, Joe. Here's your line. Apparently, he just couldn't remember any of them. They had to keep repeating and repeating. And some of the other details in this are truly terrifying. When his voice failed him, they would try to help him find ways to avoid phone calls or avoid public events. Basically, you know, the president is just completely checked out.
Yeah, he was in a vegetative state much of the time, and then occasionally he would have a so-called good day, and then they'd prop him up in front of the cameras, and he would sound semi-coherent. But most of the time he was challenged, and that's why he had very short work days, only came down to the Oval Office, you know, at 10 o'clock, maybe from 10 to 2 every day. They would put makeup and powder his hair, not for a press conference, just to go downstairs. So he was completely useless. And again, we knew that, and you were calling him all kinds of funny names on you know, together.
The relic.
It appeared. The relic, the fossil.
The fossil.
That was one of my favorites of yours. But you know, we knew that. The skeptics knew it. But it's the cover-up that's so outrageous, and the media should be ashamed of themselves.
Most people
and people in his party too.
Most people knew it, because if you've got eyes, if you can look at footage, you know that is a very sick, old, demented man.
Yeah.
It's absolute madness. And frankly, Americans should never forgive the Democrat Party for that. If they do, they're idiots. They're fools.
And all the ones who are doing the cover-up, including Kamala, you know, should be ashamed of themselves. They have no shame, though, of course. So they would do it again. They did it in 2020 because they thought, and they were right, he was the best chance of all the people running for president that year. He was the best chance at beating Trump. They ran him as a so-called moderate and a unifier. How'd that work out? You know, so they voted for Biden, and they got Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, basically. But they knew that those two could not win. Bernie clearly was winning the nomination in 2020. Biden came in 5th in Iowa, and in spite of the Dr. Jill appearances, and 4th in Iowa, 5th in New Hampshire. He was dead on arrival, and they should have just let it go, but they didn't because they're power hungry.
And how is he doing now? Has anyone seen him? Is he still with us?
He is completely detached, and no one's seen him. I mean, when he does make a comment, it's usually pretty useless. So he's not really president right now. Trump is actually president.
And it's amazing, actually, considering the inauguration hasn't happened. It's just like everyone's just going, well, Biden's gone, isn't he? Probably taxidermy at this point. I just want to ask you something. I can't, because I've got an American in the studio, I've got to ask you. So the story that I'm obsessed with at the moment is what is going on with all those drones, the new... What is that, Greg?
I know, it's amazing, because nobody knows. And I've read, you know, a lot of articles about it.
Knows.
Well, someone must. But
someone knows.
I can't figure it out, right? Because it's, you know, there's all kinds of theories. It's the CIA, it's the U.S. military, it's the Chinese, it's the Russians. Biden is asleep at the wheel, so you're not going to hear from him. Remember, he let the balloon fly across the country and gather all the data and send it back to China before shooting the balloon down. Meanwhile, he's shooting down drones and balloons, like, you know, little like balloon club balloons in Illinois and Michigan, to show how powerful he was, but letting the Chinese balloon fly across the country. So I wouldn't count on anything in terms of, you know, guessing what the true story is. It will come out ultimately, and I think you're starting to see some local activity. A lot of the towns and counties in New Jersey are taking action, but you'll hear nothing from Biden.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't even call him acting president. That ship has sailed. Trump is, you know, we're still 4 weeks away from the inauguration, but he is essentially the president.
It can't be called acting president, because if there's one thing an actor can do, it's remember their lines. Greg, thank you ever so much. It's always good having you in the studio. And
thanks,
guys,
Alex.
I don't know if you've been down the wormhole with this whole drones in America thing. It is crazy. What is going on? Honestly, I'm obsessed with this story. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't help myself. I get there on Twitter and I'm like, what is going on? Anyway, taking a short break now, but when I come back, hopefully we'll be speaking to some of you. And we're going to also have, in the last half of the programme, a bit of a Christmas travel update, because it's the busiest day of the year, apparently, for people wanting to get away for the festive period. I'm back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, it's time to hit up the phone lines and let's speak to John, who's in Angus. Hiya, John.
Hi, Alex. Happy Christmas to you. I think I'm going to have this your programme because you send my blood pressure getting me so cross with the things you're talking about.
Why? What's making you cross?
Well, we'll start. The one I was getting cross about was HS2.
Yes, stay cross.
My brother and mother don't very far away from it, and the mess they're making. Really, enough is enough. They should stop. Absolutely stop on January the 1st. As your chap said, they're never going to finish it. They should stop all those construction workers and stick them on the roads, fill all the holes,
right.
Put bypasses round all the houses. The trains are old technology. We travel between Northampton and Edinburgh quite a lot. Recently, the number of times I've been told staff haven't turned up for work, the train stopped. And you hear it, if it's not my train, it's somebody else's train. It's unreal. We don't want to be held to ransom by these railway workers anymore. We want to forget building any more railways. We need to have more roads so we can be responsible in our own vehicle, and we have not got to rely on other people having strikes, not wanting to come into work. It's absolutely
this is what's mental. Yeah, what's absolutely mental? What's mental about this is HS2 was proposed in 2009, right? The world has changed so much since 2009. We were told, weren't we, it's going to be brilliant, we're going to lead the world having a high-speed railway, isn't it great? Not that France hasn't had one for a gazillion years. And we're told we needed this for the economy because the economy was too London-centric. And so what we needed was be able to build offices here, and then people could get between meetings really quickly. 15 minutes earlier, woohoo! And yet, I think out of all the things that have been invented since 2009, like 50% of Dubai's been built, China's built 45,000 kilometres of high-speed railway. I think the most ridiculous thing that's happened...
I know some farmers who are farming and have it going through their land. Right. There was one thing with a heap of soil, and I heard this from actually one of the contractors on the side, was moved, massive tons and tons of soil, was moved 4 times. For what?
I don't know.
Chaotic.
But what is even the most balmy thing to me is back in 2009 we were told we needed this for the economy so people could work here and work there and get places quicker. Well, I think the most interesting thing that's been invented since then is Zoom. Nobody goes to offices anymore anyway. When I have meetings of people in America, I'm not getting on a plane to go there. I'm doing it via Zoom. In fact, most people on this programme join the show via Zoom when I have guests. Most people don't come and sit. It's just...
Maybe you could tell Starmer that too.
I can't tell him anything. He's a pig-headed moron, isn't he?
So you get my blood pressure.
No, listen, John, you go relax. Have yourself a nice little sherry or something and... chill out. You were never going to get it up in Angus anyway. John, thank you ever so much for your call. It's been a pleasure venting with you. That's what we call communal catharsis. Ted will be very happy I've said that because he's got a little Alex bingo card where when I say my catchphrases, he marks them down. So there you go, Ted. Have you got a full house yet? No, not yet. Right, let's have a listen to a voice night. Voice night? That's I don't know what accent that was. A voice note now. PJ.
Morning, Alex. Happy Friday. Look forward to Friday every week when you're standing in for Julia. Listen, I watch and I listen to these clowns that's running the government now, and it seems to me they're like a badly paid bunch of cheap pantomime actors with Keir Starmer, the farmer harmer, as widow Twanky. They just come across as absolutely, they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it is comical and farcical what they're doing to this country. It's absolutely shocking. Have a great day. Let's get something sorted and get these people out. See you later. Bye.
Bye, PJ. I like that. Full of enthusiasm. Although, I mean, they are like panto characters. The problem is pantomime brings you festive joy. It makes you laugh most of the time, however cruddy it is, and I don't get much festive joy from the Labour Party. I'm going to read a few messages before the break while it's still on the subject of you and all the things you have to say. John says, I'm all of those lovely things you said about your listeners and more, and I'm very handsome as well. All right, John, I'll get your number after this. And Kenny in Edinburgh says, hi, Alex, you're mad. You're 100% back-crap crazy, but don't ever change. You're in danger of one day being as cool as me. I can live in hope. Right, going to take a short break now, but when I come back, if you're setting off today to rejoin your family or go see loved ones this Christmas, perhaps you're going to an airport to get some winter sun, to get out of the madness and actually have some happiness in your festive break, you'll want to stay tuned, because after the break, I'm going to be talking to the travel editor of The Sun about travel chaos, because today is the day that the great getaway begins. I'm back after this.
We're talking about someone here who is a serious crime boss, dealing in drugs. What about the families which have suffered as a result of his activities? And it's been claimed that if he was to return to Turkey, he may well suffer persecution. An immigration tribunal heard that he had returned to his homeland at 8 separate occasions. We have a dysfunctional asylum system, and we also have a human rights framework which doesn't prioritise the safety and security of the law-abiding British public.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. Now, if you are planning on heading off, as a lot of the country is, to go somewhere this Christmas, today is supposed to be the big day of travel. Motor agencies have warned of pre-Christmas panic and record traffic as millions are set to make holiday journeys. Well, Lisa Minnow is here with me, the travel editor of The Sun. Yeah. How bad is it out there?
Well, it's pretty bad. This is meant to be the busiest day of this Christmas getaway season. 23 million of us were making trips in cars today, and right now is apparently apparently the peak time. It's going to start to ease off a bit as we get into the rest of the weekend, but Monday and Saturday also going to be busy on the roads, and the trains are as chaotic as they always are, but we've got over 400 engineering projects happening over Christmas and New Year. So there's going to be a lot of train cancellations, a lot of trains not running, particularly from places like London, Liverpool Street, Paddington and St Pancras, as well as Crewe in the north as well. So it really is going to be one of those things where if you're going to get anywhere this year, make sure you check before you travel.
Yeah, and I mean, at least I've heard that apparently 95% of roadworks are supposed to be cancelled over Christmas to make a bit of space on the motorways. But I mean, I heard as well that isn't there a problem with getting down to some of the airports today?
That's right. Well, I mean, of course, you're going to have that because you've got huge amounts of traffic on the road. It's a bit of a perfect storm, isn't it? You've got everybody still working. It's still a proper working day. So you've got all of those commuters, plus you've also got all those people looking to head home for the holidays because obviously people are maybe going to have taken Monday off. They're going to have a bit of an extended break. So you've got all of those traffic on the road at the same time. So the roads are particularly busy. So the M25 is busy around Heathrow and Gatwick, so to leave extra time for there, as well as Manchester as well. Manchester Airport today, we've been seeing some really quite dramatic queues for getting into car parks and also for security in the airport itself. So making sure you leave enough time is going to be really important. It's the busiest ever Christmas for our airports. There's 6.1 million of us going to be heading away over the season. Wow. So you really are going to have to make sure that you're leaving enough time to get to the airport and through the airport.
Yeah, well, Lisa, do you know what I think you miss, Lisa? I think you need a helicopter. Wouldn't it be amazing? I think you've got such a nice voice for radio. I think we should all club together and get Lisa a helicopter for Christmas, so in the new year you can just sort of
zoom around for you.
Yeah, that'd be really good. If people are thinking of setting off today, if they haven't done so yet, they might be doing a half day. Would you actually say, well, why don't you leave it a day or two? Is it just,
generally, any time when you've got one of these big holiday seasons coming up, it's always a good idea if you want to hit the roads early in the morning or late at night. Don't bother trying to get onto the roads in the middle of the day. It's always going to be the busiest. And with trains, as I say, just make sure you check before you travel because lots are going to be delayed, altered, cancelled over the coming few days as we get into all of those engineering projects.
Anything affecting flights? Is it just chaos at airports? It's busy, but hopefully all flights, nothing big going on there.
So the only thing that we've got on the horizon we might need to keep an eye out for is that the Met Office have issued some sort of alerts for weather over the next couple of days. It could be that we see the high winds and storms, high rain, affecting flights coming out of some of those northern airports and maybe even down as far as, Gatwick and Heathrow, the busy ones, overnight tonight and into tomorrow as well. So another thing to look out for, make sure that you've got that weather forecast as well as your train forecast and everything else.
A great opportunity for us all to tune into Big Jet TV. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I love Big Jet TV. It's
I love it.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, by the way, at home, it's this man who sits and sort of watches the planes coming out of Heathrow.
That's right,
and landing in sort of stormy weather, and he does the best commentary on it. It's like, he's got a touchdown, is he go, oh. Anyway, it's really good. Lisa, thank you ever so much. And like I said, we need to get you a helicopter for the new year.
I'd love a helicopter.
Yeah, I can see you with a little sort of, the headpiece in the background. Right. Now, let us remind ourselves, shall we, of we've got a new ambassador in America. That's right. Lord Mandelson. Again, a new political life for him. You can't get rid of him. He's like Rasputin. He's back. He's been given the top job over in the States, in Washington, D.C., and I bet that they cannot wait to welcome him with open arms over there, particularly in the light of these gorgeous comments that he said about President Trump.
With an American president who is little short of a white nationalist and racist. Even those who have a sneaking admiration for Donald Trump because of the strength of his personality nonetheless regard him as reckless and a danger to the world.
You can't make it up, can you? I mean, thank goodness, frankly, Donald Trump doesn't seem to bear grudges, despite what people say about him. Thank goodness he doesn't seem to do that, because, he'd be pretty cheesed off at that. I don't know why they all did it. It's like they had some sort of mad problem where as soon as Donald Trump's mentioned, they all have to say the most ridiculous, hyperbolic thing about him. And what doesn't make sense? Oh, he's reckless, he's dangerous, he's a white nationalist, he's a racist, he's evil incarnate, even Satan admires him, whatever, as they say. But what I don't understand is he's already done a term in office. He's already done 4 years, and guess what? He didn't do anything. Well, no, he did a lot of good things, but didn't do anything that should make people concerned. And it's like they all have to get together and go, isn't he awful? Because they think it makes them shine with moral rectitude. They want to shower themselves in superiority. And now, look, I bet that clip's going to wend its way all the way over to Washington. That's going to make for some uncomfortable first meetings, isn't it? Oh, shall we get an American perspective on this? It's one of our regulars. Let's speak to Cindy, who's in Michigan. Hi, Cindy.
Hey, Alex. I got to tell you, you remind me of a beautiful, sunshiny day.
Oh.
That's what you are.
Really?
That's what you are. Yeah. Totally.
Oh, well, I woke up this morning looking a bit like Rod Stewart the morning after a bender, but, you know, a bit of makeup.
No, I doubt that. I totally doubt that. I wake up like Rod Stewart with dark hair.
I think there's a certain time in our lives when we wake up with a hangover that we all look a bit like Rod Stewart. I don't know what Rod Stewart morphs into when he has a hangover. Maybe he just stays the same.
Well, no, Rod Stewart's hot. He's hot.
Cindy, look, we've been through this before. Whoever is sitting in here, especially if it's male, you think they're all hot. Cindy, I know what you're like. We've been through this before.
Oh.
Now, what about Lord Mandelson? Is he hot?
Oh my God, no. He's dramatic. So dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would compare Trump to Satan. You're right.
Yeah, he would do. I mean, do you think this is going to have an impact? I mean, loads of people have said stuff about Trump, and he just sort of seems to brush it off, doesn't he?
He does because it's not true. It's he knows it's dramatic. He knows that in some people's mind he can't do anything right.
Right.
Even though he served already, and we had my husband and I were able to get a house under Trump because the interest rates were so low. We got a good deal, and we locked it in, too. The mortgage, we locked it in. We were smart.
Yeah. No, yeah. Cindy, it's always good catching up with you. If anyone's the ray of sunshine, it's you. You always bring me so much joy. That is Cindy in Michigan, and any regular listeners know Cindy by now. She's never far away from a phone. Good old Cindy. Let's have a listen to a voice note from Mark.
Hi, Alex. It's Mark here from Leeds. This what really winds me up is the amount of people in this country, which is, I have to say, I think is the majority of people, are obviously very critical of the government, and yet they welcome these chancellors and prime ministers and other ministers into their workplace, shake hands and nod as if they're their best buddies. What they don't realise is these people are assassinating their business, and I just can't understand the logic behind it all. It really does frustrate me that the British people, in some respects, show a certain amount of being two-faced, whereby they say, oh, the government this, that and the other. So they walk through their factory or their workplace and they shake hands and smile nicely. I don't get it. I know if it happened to me, I'd take the day off. I couldn't bear it. Thank you, Alex. All the best. Have a nice Christmas.
Oh, you have a lovely Christmas too, Mark, my darling. A couple of messages now. Oh, Stuart says, I was wondering, in the next election, is there any chance you might stand for Parliament? I tell you what, Stuart, with me in charge of this country, there'd be some changes. I wouldn't rule it out. Now, if you want to know what's going on, all things drones, give me a call. Anything. I tell you, I can back up with videos. Gary, mate, I love the drones thing. Now, this one, Daniel says, HS2 is old technology. Let's have maglev. Seriously, it's a step back, Daniel. Do you know, maglevs are old technology. I used to live in China. I've lived everywhere, me. I used to live in China, so I actually got on that maglev train, which goes from the airport in Shanghai into the city. Pretty cool it is too. Well, the Chinese have now invented this train that goes faster than the speed of sound and hovers, or well, maglev kind of hovers, but it sort of isn't even attached to something. China's built 45,000 kilometres of high-speed railway in the whole time that we've just built a bat tunnel. I can't get over it. It's ridiculous. You like that, don't you, bat tunnels? Is that where you slept last night? Have you come in from your bat tunnel?
I've slept, hang on.
He's not even plugged his... He laughed at bat tunnel so much he forgot to plug his microphone.
I did, that's exactly what happened. You have lived in a lot of places.
I have, yeah. I got around me.
Oh, about a year ago, you nearly came to live near me.
Oh, I am still going to do that.
You're still going to do that?
I'm just trying to figure out, using, like, private detectives, which your exact house is, so I can move in next door one day and be like,
like you don't already know, Alex.
I don't.
You've had the people on it, I know.
Oh,
You've done the database check.
You know me. Yeah, you know me. We'd have really good joint barbecues.
That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, we could talk about food.
Sevenoaks barbecues are really, really good. Yeah.
Sevenoaks. See, I've started referring to it as the Oaks because I love it so much.
I went to. I saw the doctor the other day. Sounds like a gag, doesn't it? I went to the doctor the other day. It was me, an Englishman, Irishman, a Scotsman. No, he was talking about, they do all the questions. What's your alcohol intake and all the rest of it. And I told him, I said it's quite low actually. And he said, I said, I'm sure that's the Sevenoaks average. And he said, if only you knew what the Sevenoaks average was. It's not pretty.
That's why I've got to go there.
It is. It's
the Sevenoaks average.
It's the only town. It's actually sponsored by Prosecco.
Is it? I don't like Prosecco. I think it's a bit claggy. It's gross, isn't it?